Chairman, I've had confirmation that the live stream has started.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Now let's get on to good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee on Thursday, the 4th of February, 2021. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn the meeting for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphones. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. The vote will be taken by a roll call of committee member by the Democratic Services Officer. I must also remind you to make sure that your mobile phones are off and turn off your microphones if you're not speaking. We have public speakers at the meeting today, and they will be joining the meeting by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosure, pecuniary interest, or any interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at an appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hands function. Before we start today's business, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask the committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral divisions. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. Members, I call your name. If you could confirm your name and your electoral division, please. Councillor Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Councillor for Constantine, Morning and Budok.
Councillor Batters.
Good morning, Chris Batters, Llanivit Blisland Division.
Councillor Bull.
Good morning, Jackie Bull, Sudostal Poltaire Division.
Councillor Code.
Graham Code, Hale South.
Councillor Dyer.
John Dyer, Chasewater, Kenwyn and Battersea.
Councillor Evans.
Geoffrey Evans, Councillor for Falmouth Orwellick.
Councillor Foot.
Jesse Foot speaking, Cornwall Councillor for the St Germans and Landulph Division.
Councillor Greenslade.
Fred Greenslade, St Denis and Lampion.
Councillor Hurd.
John Hurd, Councillor for Camborne Pendorvis Division.
Councillor Long.
President Darley, Councillor Andrew Long, Callington Division.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Sue Nicholas. Councillor Nicholas appears to have left the meeting for a moment. We'll come back to Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Olivier.
Cornelius Olivier, Penzance Central Division.
Councillor Rand.
Julian Rand, St Kevin and Monique Division.
And we've got the Vice Chairman, Councillor Parsons.
Good morning, Councillor Adrian Parsons, representing the Alton Division.
And Chairman, Councillor Kaczmarek.
Yeah, Councillor Mark Kaczmarek, Cornwall Councillor for Caharet, Gwenup and St Day.
We have some other members with us today, including Councillor Biscoe, Councillor Nolan, Councillor Pollard, Councillor Rich, Councillor Harris, Councillor Alvey, Councillor Tudor and Councillor Rushworth. The officers present today are Matt Stevenson, Planning Group Leader, Matt Dogle, Principal Development Officer, Mark Broomhead, Planning Group Leader, Peter Bainbridge, Principal Development Officer, Ben Kerno, Senior Legal Officer, Nikki Mannell, Principal Affordable Housing Officer, Nick Marsden, Affordable Housing Manager, Hugh Given, Principal Development Officer, Highways, Rowena Brebner, Democratic Services Meeting Producer, and myself, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services Clerk for the meeting today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sarah. First item on the agenda of today's meeting is apologies for absence. Do you have any apologies of absence?
Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. No apologies received, Chair.
Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No indications? Declarations of interest? None? Can you see any, Sarah?
I can't see any, Chair.
Okay. Item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January 2021, pages 1 to 4. We'll go through them as a matter of accuracy. Pages 1, pages 2, pages 3, and page 4. Are members happy this to be signed as a true and accurate record?
We need a proposer and a seconder, Chair, and then we'll just have to take a short vote.
Proposed by Chris Barters. Proposed by Chris Barters.
Seconded by Councillor Rand.
Okay. Okay, we've got proposed and seconder.
Yeah, proposed by Councillor Batters, seconded by Councillor Rand, that the minutes are a true record of the meeting. When I call your name, please state if you are for, against or abstaining. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Batters.
For.
Bull.
For.
Code.
For.
Dyer.
For.
Evans.
For.
Foot.
For.
Greenslade.
For.
Hurd.
For.
Kasmarek. Councillor Kasmarek.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Nicholas. For. Olivier.
I'll abstain as I wasn't present.
Parsons.
For.
And Rand.
For.
Yes, Chairman, the minutes have been agreed that they were a true record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Item 4 on the agenda, applications for consideration. And members are encouraged, in the interest of time and efficiency at the meeting, to should have contacted the case officer prior to the meeting, should they have had questions or comments on any of the following applications. The first application we have before us today is 4.1, PA 20/00963, Carrick House, Pydar Street, Truro, TR11DT, pages 5 to 158. And the case officer on this one is Matt Doval. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen a second. Hopefully you should be able to see the presentation on screen now.
I can see it.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Chair, for the introduction. I just bring members' attention to the update that was previously circulated, which included an endorsement of the heads of terms by Cornwall Councillor Tim Dwelly as portfolio holder, a revised plan, which I'll highlight the revision when we get to that particular plan in the presentation, and just a slight amendment to the recommendation to update condition 3 to reflect the revised plan received. So the key issues for consideration today: this proposal is for the redevelopment of a brownfield site in the city centre, where there's been a long-term ambition to redevelop, delivery of homes, employment and community space in a sustainable location, the design and character of the proposed development upon the wider setting, the less than substantial harm to the character and setting of the conservation area and certain listed buildings, and transport, including loss of car parking. So this is the location plan of the site outlined in red. You see it's just to the north of the city centre of Truro. And then just a zoomed in plan of that red line application site area. So just to make members aware, You have Pydar Street to the centre left of the screen, St Clements Street to the bottom, Pydar House, which are the Cornwall Council offices, just to the left-hand side of the application site, and Pydar Street with shops and commercial premises included just to, or the street just included to the south, outlined in red. The site area is 4.52 hectares. This is just an aerial plan of that previous slide. So as you can see, predominantly car parking, the former Carrick District Council offices, and some commercial units, some of which have been vacated recently. Again, just another site plan, this time highlighting the listed buildings and conservation areas within the area. So the purple are the listed buildings. There are 99 within 250 metres of the application site. Most notable in terms of impacts, which we'll highlight during the presentation and the images later, is the viaduct, which is grade 2 listed, and Brunel's Piers, which is to the north of the application site. The cathedral, which is grade 1 listed, which I'm sure members are familiar with, and the properties 16 to 25 Pydar Street, which are grade 2 listed, and just to the western side of the top of Pydar Street, opposite of Newlook, for those that are familiar with the area. Two conservation areas are the Truro Conservation Area, which surround the site to the north, west and south, and the Kenwyn Conservation Area, which is to the northern side of the viaduct. Just moving on now to the proposed plan. So this is the demolition parameter plan. As you can see, the proposed buildings to be demolished, the former Carrick District Council offices, the viaduct car park and the commercial units. Now just moving on to the proposed plans. This is the development parcel parameter plan. The grey sets out the maximum built form parcels, and as you can, there are setbacks to the blocks, notably F and G, which has a maximum height datum of 25 metres above ordnance datum. And again, we'll see how that looks when we go to the visuals later in the presentation. This is the phasing parameter plan to give you an idea of how the development would be built out. So phase 1A includes blocks A, B and C and the public realm. 1B includes block D. 2 is the blue colour, so that's blocks E and F. 3 are the blocks G to K, so the pinky sort of colour to the southeastern corner. And phase 4 are blocks L and M to the north of the site on the opposite side of the River Allen. This is the proposed land use parameter plan. So it sets out the proposed land uses within the site. The red blocks include shops, cafes, hot food takeaway, potentially hotels, residential institutions, community uses, so it could be all or any of those uses. L&M, which include areas of red, so those sorts of uses would be limited to only restaurants and cafes, so they wouldn't include shops, community uses on that side of the river. The orange blocks are the same as those red blocks, so the same uses, shops, cafes, hot food takeaway, but could also potentially include B1A office space. The purple are residential use only, so you can see that's a small portion of block L and the majority of block M on the right hand side or the eastern side of the River Allen. And the blue is the proposed educational or mixed use block, which is the intended location for the Hive as part of Falmouth University. The design code is just an important point to raise. The design code controls ground floor uses to Pydar Lane, which is the diagonal from Pydar Street towards the central square, and the Riverwalk area. So the area to the sort of eastern side of blocks C, K and J, those uses would be non-residential uses, so to provide some vibrancy at street scene level. This is the access and movement parameter plans. This is the plan that's been slightly revised, and I'll touch on that as we go talk through this slide. So the green routes, hopefully you can see, are the retained and upgraded primary routes. That's Pydar Street and St Clements Street. So they will still be open, obviously, for vehicular access, pedestrians, cyclists. Purple are the routes within the site that are proposed. They're the primary fully accessible routes. So again, that's Pydar Lane and the Riverwalk. They will be accessible by vehicles, but the accessibility would be limited to certain times of the day, for example, for delivery vehicles to service those commercial and other uses. The buff lines, which hopefully you can potentially see, are the secondary routes. So again, there would be some vehicular access through those routes. So it's to the north of the site between the viaduct and blocks A to C, for example. Those routes are predominantly west to east. And again, they would be limited vehicular access to occupants and at certain times of the day for delivery vehicles. The blue routes are tertiary routes, so no vehicular access. So as you can see, that's the narrower streets or ropes, and also the two areas, the two sort of access routes on the Morass car park side of the development. They could only be accessed by pedestrian linkages, and also from a pedestrian route from Dubois Court. The dark brown oakways are no vehicular access again, so that's the narrow between blocks G and H. The orange dash lines are proposed walkways, and the blue dash lines are pedestrian cycle bridges. So as you can see, the plan has a great deal of permeability throughout the site. Just in terms of the revision includes a text to the key. So hopefully you might be able to see on the right hand side, it confirms that the existing vehicular bridge across the River Allen into Morass car park is to be removed. The revision includes the addition of text, which I'll repeat in full, which is the existing vehicular bridge across the River Allen into Morass car park is to be removed or converted to pedestrian cycle access only. So it's just providing clarity that the existing vehicular bridge will either be removed or it could be converted and restricted to pedestrian cycle access. In terms of the dots you can see on this plan, the orange dots are the existing vehicular accesses which are to be retained and improved. The red dots are new vehicular accesses, and the purple dots are pedestrian accesses only. Just now moving on to the height parameter plan. So the light blue are up to 1 story, the dark blue up to 2 story. You can see they're predominantly in the centre of the site and a small area of Morass car park site. The pink are up to 3 story, which is the roughly triangular shaped building just to the south of or east of Pydar Lane. The purple are the up to 4 story buildings, so that's the corner facing, or the corner of Pydar Street, St Clement Street, and the buildings in Morass car park. The dark orange blocks are up to 5 stories. That's 4 stories, and the 5th story being a 1 story setback. And again, I'll show that in the visuals as to how that would work. These would predominantly be along Pydar Street and the blocks to the south at St Clement Street area. And the buff colour, which is, as you can see, just at the top left-hand block there, block A. So the majority of that block is the buff colour. That is up to 6 stories, and that is 5 stories with a 1 story setback. This is the public amenity and open spaces parameter plan. So the hatched area within the hive or proposed hive, the educational use block, is an area retained for tree planting. So there are trees that would be retained in that area. The Green River corridor is an area of open space. So the intention is to enhance the River Allen, make it a place for people to go and visit and sit and take place in sort of incidental play equipment, that sort of thing. The purple area is the central area of key central open space. The orange is again another key public open space within the hive, and the buff are the public realm areas. So they're the streets and walkways, which obviously could include things like artwork, incidental play, those sorts of things. Just moving on now, this is an illustrative master plan. This is a plan that's been supplied to show how the parameter plans, once influenced by the design code, could be built out. Now just moving on to some existing sections. So the top section is through the viaduct car park. So we're going from west to east. The viaduct car park is central to that. And then the bottom cross section is through Circuit House and Carrick House. So you can see the shape of the cathedral in the background. And again, just some further existing sections. So the top section is along Pydar Street. The middle section is along St Clement Street, so looking back towards the viaduct. And the bottom section is if you were at River Allen looking west towards Pydar House or Pydar Street. Now just moving on to some proposed elevations. So this just reflects the existing sections or elevations we've just seen. So the top is along Pardar Street. So you have New Look to the right hand side. Hopefully you can just see that. And the black outline shows the maximum height parameters. That's the maximum height given on the parameter plans. The grey shades are illustrative master plans, indicative illustrative master plans of how those blocks could look once the design code is applied. The middle elevation is the view from St Clement Street. So looking back towards the viaduct. So this is the Army Reserve Centre to the right hand side. And the bottom section is the view from River Allen, looking back across towards Pardar Street. Looking again at some existing sections. So the top section, top middle is through the viaduct to St Clement Street. And the bottom one is a diagonal route northeast to southwest across the site. And again, some proposed sections. So the top one is west to east through what would be the viaduct car park as it exists. So this is looking back through in the middle of the site, basically looking back towards the viaduct. So those are blocks A, B and C. Again, you can see the black outline of the max parameters and the grey indicative illustrative master plan as to how those parameter plans would be influenced by the design code, or potentially could be influenced by the design code as to what those blocks may appear like. And the bottom one is the west to east, is the blocks along St Clement Street. So again, the maximum parameters outlined in black and the illustrative indicative master plan, the grey shades. And then just some further sections. So the top and middle through the site, north to south, viaduct to St Clement Street. So this is NCP car park on the right hand side, viaduct is over on the left hand side. And the bottom is the diagonal cross section northeast to southwest. Moving on now to the visuals. This is viewpoint 1. This is from True Road open space for members or members that are familiar. So this is the area of open space to the east of the football club ground, just on the opposite side of the road from the football club of the A390. So again, you can see the right hand side, you can see Truro Cathedral. On the left hand side, you can see the viaduct. So that's the existing view. This is the view with the maximum parameters, heights imposed on it. So again, as you saw in the illustrations and the proposed elevations, that's the maximum height blocks. The indicative illustrative master plan would not be entirely like that once the design code is imposed and you get the breaks in the blocks. But you can see the viaduct just behind the wireframes and the cathedral on the right hand side. This is a view from Northfield Drive. So this is to the north of Morley Avenue. Looking back, you can see the cathedral and the viaduct pretty central in the view there. And again, this is with those maximum parameter wireframe imposed. This is the view from Truro Cemetery. So that's off St Clement's Hill. So we're due east of the application site. You can see the cathedral centre, the viaduct, sorry, centre right, the cathedral centre left. That's with the maximum wireframe parameters imposed. Again, the illustrative indicative master plan with the design code would break up those blocks. This is viewpoint 8 from St Clement Street. I'm sure members are familiar with this view. You see the viaduct in the background. And this is that view with the maximum wireframe parameters imposed. And this is a view from Elm Court. So Elm Court, for those that are not familiar, is northeast of the site. It's off of Paul's Terrace. You can see Pardar House and the former Carrick District Council offices just in the centre, just above where that small car is. This is a slightly zoomed in shot, but it's with the master plan maximum wireframes imposed. And this is from Pardar Street. So we've just come through the viaduct. We're on the right hand side of the road. We're walking down as we would be walking down towards the city centre. Again, that's a view I'm sure everyone's familiar with. And this is with that maximum wireframe parameter imposed. As I've been saying with the design code, that would break up those blocks, and the application is accompanied by an illustrative indicative master plan for this view, which is this slide here. So that just shows how those maximum parameters would be broken up. So block A, which is the closest one we can see, sort of centre left of the shot, there would be a break within that block as controlled by the design code. And this is a 6-storey block with 5 stories with 1-storey setback. So you can see the setback there is the gable end setback from the front edge of that building. That's an indicative illustration, so that's not before members for detail, but it's just to show how the design code and parameter plans could be interpreted. This is a view now from Pardar Street. Again, this is Upper Pardar Street, so we're just outside the Pardar Street car park, looking directly at the cathedral. Pardar House is just to the right-hand side. You can see the existing former Carrick District Council offices just in the shot there. And this is that shot with the maximum wireframe parameter imposed over it. And again, with the illustrative master plan. So again, an interpretation of how the parameter plans could be interpreted with the design code measures, included the mandatory elements. Again, it's an illustration of how it could be interpreted and a design that could come forward potentially. And we're now stood outside the entrance to Pardar House, looking back at the former Carrick District Council offices and the cathedral. And again, that's with the maximum parameter plan wireframe imposed. And again, with the illustrative master plan indicating once the design code measures, mandatory code elements are included, how that view could be. And now we're down at the bottom of, or the top of Pardar Street, the pedestrianised bit, looking back up at the Carrick District Council offices. And that's with the maximum parameter plans wireframe imposed. And this view is the final viewpoint is from Pardar Street outside the Premier stores or the little shop that's there opposite Pardar car park, looking directly at the viaduct. And that is the view with the maximum shaded wireframe. One final view, which is a view that was requested by the Historic Environment Service, is a view from Redanick Lane. So this is the open space within Redanick Lane. So we're sort of due east of viewpoint 1. If you remember the first viewpoint I showed, which was opposite to the football club, just slightly to the east. This again is further to the east and slightly further down the slope. So it's a similar view to viewpoint 1. And the viaduct there you can see just centre left of shot. So in the balance of considerations, the proposal would deliver on a brownfield site that holds limited visual value and is identified for redevelopment within the Truro and Kenwyn Neighbourhood Development Plan. Any harm is considered to be less than substantial in relation to heritage assets and is considered to be outweighed by the benefit of the scheme, namely the delivery of homes, employment, commercial, community and educational uses in a highly sustainable location as and when such uses come forward for consideration. The loss of parking is considered acceptable due to the park and ride facilities, aspirations of the public sector travel plan and Truro transport strategy, which encourage access to the city centre by sustainable modes of transport. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions as set out in the report, and with that minor revision to condition 3, which just references an updated plan. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you for that, Matt. We have a number of speakers on this one. First speaker we have is Mrs. Arnold Carlyon. And good morning, Mrs. Carlyon.
Chairman, if Mrs. Carlyon could press *6 to unmute her telephone, we'll be able to hear her.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning, Mrs. Carlyon. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Welcome to the meeting this morning. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Very kind. Thank you. You can hear me well? You can hear me?
We can hear you.
That's fine. In the late 1960s, I was present at the Truro Borough Council meeting when the developers, Hearts of Oak, placed the paper plans before the council, which were agreed. And then the heart was ripped out of the Pardar Street area of Truro. We lost the medieval burgage strips, the courtyard of almshouses, the armoury and much more. It sparked such anger that I decided never to let this happen again. So I became an independent member of Cornwall Council in 1973, remaining in local government since that time. And now, 50 years later, it's happening all over again. I ask you to consider the artist's impressions of what the development is to look like. Take away the leafy trees and you are left with brutalistic post-war architecture, with fenestration which leaves a lot to be desired. The buildings are so high they obliterate even the views of the cathedral and the viaduct. I agree the site is to be developed, but the plans before you bear little resemblance to those which were presented at the public consultation, and are no longer what the people of Truro envisaged. We feel our responses now reside in the shredder or the incinerator. Just look at the enormity of the development. If ever there was town cramming, this must be an excellent example. You will be aware the site is adjacent to the Truro Conservation Area, and I ask that the plans are scaled down so that the buildings reflect something of the vernacular architecture of the city. See the Historic Environment Report. What is of paramount importance when considering planning applications of this magnitude is public health, which always seems to come at the bottom of the list. The safe disposal of foul sewage is a subject which is out of sight and out of mind, until one day a dreadful smell evades the air, and the manhole cover exudes its contents in someone's garden or bathroom. The disposal of foul sewage cannot be left to reserve matters, because the Truro Newham treatment works were over capacity in June 2017. Public health also includes air quality, health service provision for another 1,000 people within the city. What is different about this development is that it's being financed by the council taxpayers of Cornwall and is not at this point of time a developer-led development. Surely the regeneration of this site needs to fit quietly and soberly within the area, but what you have before you is incongruous, out of scale and out of keeping with the environs of Truro, or for that matter Cornwall. We are not looking for architectural awards, but for organic growth, a development which will sit well with the adjacent conservation area and will become a pleasing extension to the city. The application is at present contrary to many policies in the local plan and the Truro and Kenyon neighbourhood plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Caroline. Are there any questions from the committee members to Councillor Caroline? Are there any questions? I'm just in between screens here, so if my Vice Chairman can look at any hands up.
Yeah, Chairman, Councillor Lloyd Rich wishes to speak, but I'm not sure if he can ask a question. No.
Well, Chairman, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Secretary. Councillor Dyer, who's on the committee, who wishes to ask a question first.
Yes, if you'd like to ask Mrs. Caroline a question, Councillor Dyer.
He's unmuting himself.
Right.
Councillor Dyer, you're still on mute.
Councillor Dyer, are you there?
I thought I was asking the question.
No, you can ask a question of Mrs. Caroline if you'd like, but if you want to wait until it's your turn. Have you got a question for Mrs. Caroline, Councillor Dyer? Your hand is up.
Councillor Dyer, you are still on mute.
Me off. I keep switching it on. Is that better?
We can hear you now. Do you have a question?
I can hear you, Councillor Dyer.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It is a very important site, this, and I congratulate Mrs. Caroline on her speech. What I am concerned about, Mrs. Caroline, in the form of a question, what views are being taken away of the viaduct and partially, and I accept it's partial, of the cathedral.
It all depends where you stand, Councillor Dyer. What if you're not, perhaps you might see the one or two spires at the top, but you're not going to see the grandeur of the building as you travel down the roads. We've got a grade 2 listed building as well of the old piers of the original railway, and they're not going to be seen. And if you look at that, go back to that Park View one, they were a little bit out of sync when Mr. Doble was talking about them, but it's horrendous. It's horrendous. It's going to kind of dominate that area of the town. And what really I think upsets me is if you're coming in on the railway, you've got a lovely view of the town. Now, there are one or two awful things, in my opinion. Those like sentry boxes just by the railway there, and also the redevelopment of what was the old infirmary.
Can we just keep it to what?
Quite well at all.
Answer the one question, the councillor, just the one question. We don't need it to, we don't need it to ramble on. We just need concise questions on this one, please, and answers.
Mr. Chairman, these things are important.
Yes,
represent.
Mr. Dyer, you asked one question and we want that question answered. We don't need it to continue to go on about the whole scheme again. Just keep the question concise. It's going to be a long day with lots of people asking questions. Okay, thank you for answering that question, Mrs. Carline. And the next speaker is Mr. Stuart Roden.
Chairman, if Mr. Roden could press *6 to unmute his telephone.
Good morning, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Roden. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Welcome to our meeting this morning. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, I wish to object to this application on the grounds of density, scale and height, and also failure to comply with relevant local policies. The fundamental issue behind this unsuitable application is at paragraph 109 of your report. It says consideration has to be given to the financial viability of the scheme, which I stress, which is an ultimate driver of the density, scaling and mass. Cornwall Council are the developers of the site. It would be entirely possible with political will to develop the site more sympathetically in a manner more in keeping with the historic townscape of Truro. I would draw attention to 4 important and linked reports. 1, the Historic Environment Report, paragraph 58. This application by virtue of scale, massing and built form of the parameter buildings and the proposed parameters, it says currently fails to comply with NPPF 196 and policies 12 and 24 of the Cornwall local plan. It then goes on to say it fails also to comply with the Truro and Kenwood neighbourhood plan, and it says this current scheme does not successfully achieve this. 2, at paragraph 53, the parameter plans and proposals do not adhere to one of the most significant mandatory codes within the design code, M18. The parameter plans permit a maximum building height of 5 and 6 stories over the majority of the site. The design code needs to set more detailed mandatory codes. That's the recommendation from one of your officers. 3, at page 29, shading of the public realm between the buildings. Heavy shade for over half of the day in the public square and river walks. For people to spend time and plan to thrive, there should be a mandatory code. Another recommendation that's not in your recommendations. 4, paragraph 131. The council's landscape officer has been consulted and is unsupportive of the proposal. Significant levels of concern have not been met. Development is likely to be cold and dark areas, unable to release the social benefits that would be retained by the mature trees within the site. To provide usable public space, building heights and mass in this area should be reduced. So to summarise, significant and damning concerns have been raised by the historic environment and landscape reports, as well as major issues from the tree officer. The density, scale and height of the development does not comply with the MPPF, Cornwall Council Local Plan or the Truro and Kenwyn Neighbourhood Plan. For these reasons, the application should be refused. In the alternative, if the committee is minded to approve the application, it should impose the mandatory plans which are recommended by the council's officers on the height of the buildings to a maximum of 4 stories, and this should be included as a condition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Roden. Are there any questions to the speaker? Any planning committee members have a question of the speaker? I'm looking for any hands up.
Can't see any, Chairman.
I can't see any. Okay, thank you, Mr. Roden, for your input on this one. Next speaker we have here is Councillor Morris Vella, Truro City Council. Are you there, Mr. Vella?
Chairman,
can you hear me?
Yeah, Councillor Vella, if you presses *6 to unmute.
I've just done that. I'll do it again.
Right. Well, good morning, Mr. Vella, and welcome to this morning's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and remind them when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Councillor Vella, Sarah Goodall.
Thank you. Can you hear me now, Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Did you hear what I said?
*6 three times. Good morning. I'm Morris Vella. I'm Chairman of the Planning at Truro Council. Visit Truro, our great little city. City Council doesn't object to a master plan for this site to guide its development. Cornwall Council's role as developer.
Mr. Vella, you're breaking up. Can you speak a bit closer to the mic?
I can do. A recommendation to approve in principle, dated 2nd of December 2020, is quoted in the officer's report. Unfortunately, the City Council's detailed response of 6th of August is not quoted at all. We object to the ways that the application has deviated from what we were led to expect during the MOU meeting, and which make its current form and scale unacceptable. Too tall, too dense and too visible. We had 16 concerns. To keep to 3 minutes, I can't address them all, but shall restrict myself to 3 of them. Firstly, the design in its density and mapping would be unsuitable for an important site in the centre of what is small in essence the small market town, nor would it enhance the city as a tourist destination. The proposal does not respect the scale or grain of Truro. There are buildings such as the cathedral higher than 3 stories, but most of these are scattered around the city. The indicative street elevations show building forms related more to the brutalist styles of the mid-20th century, no longer appropriate to the 21st. Pictures are not design proposals, but they do indicate to developers what may be acceptable. The public space officer says the outline of this built form has the potential to dominate the wider Truro cityscape and create an overshadowed public realm. The next concern with development proposals of this size and nature must now address the threat of climate change and the needs of a post-COVID-19 society. Issues such as future housing need and employment, together with economic and commercial viability, must be considered. On a publicly owned site so close to the city centre, there should be a high proportion of low to medium-rise social housing for local people who are unable otherwise to afford a home. Cornwall Council is, after all, a housing authority. Amongst other concerns were safety and attraction of Pydar Street and Connor Street crossover, loss of views of Cathedral and Viaduct, community facilities, impact of the Hive, resident parking, public transport, impact on residents of Dobbs Court, drainage and impact on the river system. Too tall, too dense, too visible. The proposals are not yet in a form that would result in a development to complement the city. The density and heights of buildings need to be reduced to reflect the grain and scale of Truro. I urge you to defer consideration until the master plan has been redrawn to enhance the city, not to do it harm. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Mr. Vella, or Councillor Vella. Are there any questions to the speaker from committee members? Can't see any hands. Can you see any hands, Adrian?
No, can't see anyone listed, Chairman.
Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker then. Next speaker we have is Glenn Kaplan-Gray.
Sorry,
applicant.
Chairman, can I come in? Councillor Long raised his hand at the 11th hour.
Okay, we'll bring in Councillor Long then. Mr. Valle, are you still there?
I am, yes.
Okay, we have a question for you from Councillor Andrew Long.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Vella, just wanted to confirm through your conversation, am I right in assuming that the City Council are in favour in principle, but the questions that you're answering in a moment is why you're asking for deferral? Is that correct?
Yes, we are in favour of the site being developed, but not developed in this form.
Right,
This
okay,
isn't
thank
what
you.
we expected.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Long. Any more questions of the speaker? None? Okay, we'll now bring in the next speaker. It's Glenn Kaplan-Gray, applicant. Good morning, Mr. Gray. Can you hear me, Mr. Kaplan-Gray?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome to this morning's meeting. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on the Pydar regeneration project this morning. This is a highly ambitious scheme which will bring much needed regeneration to a rundown area of Truro and help create a vibrant and sustainable new neighbourhood. Back in 2011, private property developers tried to deliver a retail-led scheme but failed. The council then stepped in with a project focused on regeneration and economic development. The council's vision centres around putting the community back into the heart of Truro and pioneering new ways of living and working, helping to ensure that Truro is a prosperous city which is resilient in the face of long-term economic change and the decline of retail, which has been accelerated by COVID. The project will deliver new homes on a brownfield site, innovative workspaces, a new hotel, a new riverside park, and will also include walking and cycling links as well as a community facility. In addition, we hope to deliver the Hive, which builds on Truro's growing reputation as a creative and digital cluster and Falmouth University's track record of creating high-growth companies. It will bring together education and innovation with business and entertainment facilities. The indirect value of the occupancy of the Hive is projected to deliver 57 million in local spending over 10 years. The regeneration of a complex site such as this is a major scheme and one of the largest the council has ever pursued. The site will become a catalyst for regeneration across Truro and will see nearly 170 million invested in the fabric of the city. The council is committed to investing in the economic recovery and the revitalisation of our town centres, and this scheme is part of that strategy. The longer term impacts of the development will deliver an extra 2,470 new permanent and temporary jobs and the generation of between 150 and 200 million over the first 10 years of occupation. This will increase Truro's GVA by almost 11 million, providing a much needed boost to the city's day and nighttime economy. Along with the economic impact, there are a number of wider benefits which include exceeding Cornwall Council's energy efficiency targets through efficient buildings and promoting the use of ground source heat pumps and solar panels, building infrastructure for electric vehicle charging and providing community-owned renewable energy facilities. And in addition, we will open up the riverside, creating an active nature trail along the viaduct and maximising tree planting and rooftop gardens. I wanted to end by highlighting that the scheme has been awarded highly commended in the regeneration category at the 2020 Planning Awards. The main reason given for achieving this recognition was the depth of collaboration with the local community and stakeholders, and this is something we're particularly proud of. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Spiros, I think, who's the Chief Urban Designer on this scheme. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take you first. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Questions? You first. We won't have Spiros in yet. He's the second speaker. Councillor Bastion, you need to ask a question to the speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just ask, these 400 odd students, where do you envisage they're coming from?
Thank you, Chair. So we are anticipating with the arrangement that we're coming to with Falmouth University that elements of their current syllabus, their faculties, particularly around their Games Academy and the Film School and their Launchpad programme, will be placed in the Hive, and there will be students associated with that will then make up part of the numbers you've just talked about.
Well, I only ask because who knows post-COVID what education will look like, especially with the virtual learning sort of opportunities and all. I'm just wondering whether we'll actually see that real number of students.
Well, we are in constant conversation with Falmouth University. They've been long-term partners on this project since we started the development of the master plan in 2017. They are contributing to the design of the Hive at the moment, and we've seen no stepping back from that position as a result of COVID. And we're hopeful that once we go to the next stage, we'll be able to sign an agreement with them and bring that to a conclusion.
Right, thank you. Could I just ask one more thing, please, Chair?
Go on then.
The nighttime economy, where do you think people are going to park for that?
Well, in the parking assessments that we have done, we think that the independent parking assessments that we've done, we think that taking the parking capacity out of the car park, which I think is what you're alluding to, will not have a significant impact on the wider parking in Truro, because there are other underutilised car parks, and we have the capacity of the park and ride to make up, more than make up for the loss of the parking that we're taking out.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Olivier.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question. Well, first I'd like to start by saying our experience of virtual committee meetings and of virtual learning is that there's a lot of stuff that's better done face to face if you can possibly do it. So I don't share Councillor Bastin's sort of concern about where the students will actually be going to university and having lectures or seminars anymore. I think they'll get back to that as soon as they can.
But on my questions, please.
Yeah, the question. Well, I was answering Mr. Bastin's question for him, but my question is about the affordable housing, because if the 35%, that would make 112 if we take the housing units as 320. So I just wanted to know what proportion of this was envisaged to be social rented of the 35% affordable housing.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think at this stage we have outlined. We've absolutely come to a conclusion on that, so that probably remains to be set out. It might be something that Spiros, as the next speaker, wants to pick up, but I think that's still to be determined.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, following on from Councillor Bastin's comments about parking, it does concern me that we're losing 3 car parks, so I'm not sure exactly what the total parking spaces loss is. But if you're taking that parking away, where are you going to replace it? Because I know it says sustainable modes of transport. If you've got students from Falmouth, how are you proposing that they get to and from Falmouth, depending on their timetables? And also, where are you going to have residents parking, given that we are expecting people to move to electric cars and hybrids? So cars won't disappear completely, especially if you live in the outskirts of Truro in the countryside, where we do in the far southwest of the county. You're not going to be walking or cycling to Truro from here unless you're fit and athletic. So how are you going to mitigate that?
Okay, can you answer that one, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we're anticipating 180 car parking spaces, and they're proposed in the planning application to be split between the uses, with 100 spaces likely being allocated to the residential dwellings. In terms of the wider question about students, we're very clear that we've tried to comply with Cornwall Council's policy about reducing traffic in the city and the reliance on the car. And that's why we've kind of consistently talked about the importance of the park and ride, but also the rail infrastructure that's recently been upgraded over the past few years between Truro and Falmouth. So we think overall, the taking out of the capacity of the car park, replacing some residential parking but also emphasising the importance of the public transport network makes the site much more sustainable.
Can I come back, please?
Yes,
are you
also.
aware that the bus companies have actually cut some of their timetables? Because how many, you're putting in 180 car parking spaces, how many are you actually taking out in the development by removing those 3 car parks?
Can you answer that one?
Yeah, so the car parking spaces that we're taking out are around 695, and that includes the long and short stay spaces, which are currently underutilised. The study that we've done, independent transport assessed them, clearly shows that those car parks are underutilised for most of the year, apart from the very short Christmas period. And the car parking at Pydar currently represents 12% of the overall car parking in Truro. And therefore, we don't consider that loss is significant in the context of Truro as a whole.
Okay, I think that's answered that one.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Long, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very much on the similar line to Councillor Nicholas. Can you confirm to me what work you've done in ascertaining how many days at the moment in your review, in your parking review you've done, that the removal of 695 car parking spaces would have meant that Truro would have been out of car parking spaces? So you say it's 12%, but I think it would be very useful to know is in your survey how often did, if you'd removed those 695, would have Truro have been full? So in removing these car parking spaces, what effect are you going to have on Truro's access for people who live outside of the city?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the 12% figure is the current amount that Pydar represents of the city parking as a whole. And the study we had done by ACOM indicated that it was only in the run-up to Christmas. I'm just trying to find the actual number. I think it's 21 days of the year the city was over capacity in the inner car parks. And that's the inner car parks only, not including the park and ride. So I think the answer to the question is that study was 21 days.
Okay, thank you. It is in the paperwork as well we've got before us, the planning papers. Thank you for answering that question. Councillor Jackie Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. The height of these buildings seems to be a concern and is quite a surprise to me. Is it purely because of viability that you've decided to go for the higher design? Please, I mean, I'm very pleased to see 35% affordable, but is it just viability? Thank you.
If you can answer that one, please.
No, it's not just viability. We think the proposals that we've put forward are appropriate proposals for the uses that we're suggesting. We have brought them down as a result of the consultation with the local community, and we are proposing to give the rooftops particular treatment in terms of setting back and stepping down of the roof line. So it's not just about viability, but viability is important. I referred at the start of my 3 minutes about the failure of previous private-led schemes, and they have failed because of viability issues. So I would say it is not only about viability, but that is an important consideration.
Can I come back? Yeah. So
did you want to
come back very quickly. So are we saying that a lower level design could be put in place and it would still be a viable scheme?
No, I don't believe that's the case. I think we have, I don't want to go into the financial viability too much, but you heard when we talked about the wider economic benefits of the site. We talked about workspace. We talked about ground source heat pumps. We have very high ambitions and high standards for this scheme, and the viability on this particular site linked to the ambitions we have mean that we don't want to decrease the height, because we think that will impact on the wider ambitions and make the scheme undeliverable in the shape and scale that we want to deliver it.
Okay, thank you for that. Next speaker is Adrian Councillor Parsons. You want to ask a question?
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to the parking issue, with regards to reducing the car parking spaces, do you feel that this would, just by its nature, push car users to use the park and ride facilities, etc., more, which in turn would hopefully help alleviate the congestion issues and pollution issues, which we're all very aware of in Truro? Thank you.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, we have taken the council's policy on reducing car journeys, the climate emergency, seriously. So we think our proposals here really embrace that. We have, and we're not hiding away from that, where we've been very upfront in terms of a new way of doing urban design, of making sure that we're doing all we can with the provision of cycling links, public transport access, walking links. So I think the short answer to the question is yes, I hope so.
Thank you for that. Now we have a question from a Truro Cornwall councillor, Councillor Dulcie Tudor. She's not committee member, but councillors are allowed to ask questions at this stage, even if you're not a committee member. So Dulcie, Councillor Tudor, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to ask Mr. Captain, it's quite a specific question. So there's an element of this PIDAR scheme that's asking to be part funded through the town deal, of which I'm also on the committee. So there's a link there. And I just wanted to ask a really specific question. The Hive facility, which is being asked to be funded through the town deal board, could Mr. Kaplan show me on the plans the location of where that Hive facility that's is going to be?
Can we get the plan up at all?
Apart from I can't see the screen at the moment, Chair, so that's going to be difficult. Perhaps the.
Well, it might help. The reason for my asking the question is because I want to know whether if that commercial facility is being envisaged to be in the place where we were told the community facility would be on the community hall on the scheme.
Okay, can you answer that?
No, yeah, no, it's not. And the I can't see the screen, but the Hive is block D.
Okay, so just to be absolutely clear then, because this is quite important to me, that the community hall that is in the plan is a different location to the facility which is being asked to be funded through the town deal.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, you broke up slightly, Councillor Tudor. So just to be clear, the Hive is block D and the community centre is block B, separate.
Okay, I think that answers your question now. I got no other speakers on that. There were some that wanted to come in. They're going to wait until they can speak. I will be letting all.
I've got next in the box as well, Councillor Kaczmarek. Sorry.
Sorry, Loic. I thought you retract it for later. But if you want to speak, Loic, you can ask a question now of the applicant.
No, it's not Loic. It's Councillor Alvey.
Oh, sorry, it's Councillor Alvey. Sorry, Councillor Alvey. I couldn't see any hands up. I'm using hands up system.
Oh, sorry, I just thought it was the next in the box. Sorry, so Councillor Alvey, I represent the Fiocc and Plain Place Division, Mr. Captain Gray, and you've already answered some questions around car parks, but mine specifically relates to the fact that clearly you're relying on people now using the park and ride. In doing your parking assessment, what assessment was made of the number of cars that actually enter the city, particularly using the A39 from Falmouth coming from Helston and all the rural hinterland therein, and whether those cars now being forced to use the park and ride would in fact be increasing traffic flows on the very roads you're trying to prevent additional traffic, namely the Green Lane route up to Trelisk and the Western Park and Ride, or indeed Tresolles Road to the Eastern Park and Ride. And also in assessing when the car parks were full, did that also take account of last August when there were many rainy days when every car park in Truro was chock-a-block?
Can you answer that one, or we may have to leave that one for highways later? But if you can answer that one, please.
I think it's one for the applicant rather than highways, because he.
I find out if the applicant can answer it. If not, it'll have to be the highways later on.
Chairman, I think Mr. Captain Gray has dropped out of the meeting. I can't see that he's still present.
Okay. I can see an outside line present with a mic on. Are you still there?
Hello.
Is Mr. Captain Gray still there? We lost him. Can we try to get him back, Sarah?
I can try and ring him, Chairman.
Thanks, Arena.
Sorry, Chairman, I am here, but I can't hear the committee. It's broken up quite a lot. I'll try to dial back in.
Okay.
Chairman, whilst you wait, can I just, you may have already seen it, but bring to your attention that Councillor Harris has noted he wishes to speak in due course. I'm not sure if that's to answer a question or not.
No. While we're waiting here, what I will say is that I will allow all Truro councillors to speak on this if they wish to, but they will be limited to 5 minutes. But I will bring in when it comes to their opportunity, it'll be the immediate members first and then the ones in the outline areas. Sorry about the technical problems here. Do we have Mr. Kaplan back? Kaplan Gray back?
Someone's trying to come in on a phone line, Mr. Chair. I've just pressed admit.
Sarah.
Chairman, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. Did you want to move on to the next public speaker, Spiridon, and then come back to any further questions for Mr. Captain Gray after that?
I'll move on to that. He's still the applicant. He'll probably be able to answer the questions. So I'll get on to the next public speaker now, and that is Mr. Spiridon Katros. Good morning, Mr. Katros. Welcome to this morning's meeting. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Welcome this morning. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like to also thank you for the opportunity to speak on the Pida Regeneration Project. As the proposed development seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved, the detailed design is not before members for consideration at this time. However, it is essential that good design is delivered in all future phases of the scheme. As such, the application is accompanied by a design code, several parameter plans and planning conditions to regulate how a development of this scale can be delivered. The aim of the parameter plans is to set principles for the minimum and maximum development opportunities across the site. They prescribe clear rules that will regulate any future detailed design while allowing the required flexibility to accommodate for potential updates in policy, standards and changing local needs as the project is being delivered. A thorough design code has been produced to address all consultees' comments by including over 600 mandatory design rules about vital placemaking aspects like preserving and enhancing the views to historic assets, how the volume of the buildings will be informed by daylight, and how materiality will reflect the local character of Truro. It commits to achieving over 50% by diversity gains, and it sets best practice principles to ensure the delivery of quality, accessible, safe public spaces and amenity for every home. All the above offer the consultees the tools to shape the future detailed design aspects, like the exact location and form of buildings, as has been raised by the City Council, who recommended approval for the outline. A heritage specialist worked closely with the consultees in Historic England, who raised no objection to the scheme proposals. They produced a heritage and landscape assessment as part of the environmental statement that supports the outline and states that the development is considered to be overall acceptable and contribute to improving the existing site. As a result, to the collaborative process with all consultees, there has been numerous design alterations, including reduction of the building height parameters, introduction of several new streets linking to the wider area, and 13 new mandatory views towards the Viaduct, Cathedral and River Allen. Further changes include a substantial increasing on landscaping and green areas, resulting to a development where more than half of the site will be public realm. 60% of the energy to produce by renewables on the site, and sustainable transport modes are promoted in order to reflect the Cornwall Council's Climate Change Action Plan. Finally, I would like to close that the outline proposal has been shaped by extensive engagement with local community. One of the main events where the proposals were shown attracted over 700 members of the public, including nearby residents completing questionnaires, resulting to approximately 8% of the feedback received being positive. Finally, this outline application sets the principle to support the delivery of a sustainable neighbourhood that feels and is part of Truro's future. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the speaker on this one? I noticed Bert Biscoe's had his hand up for quite a long time. He's not a committee member, but was that hand up for the previous speaker? Or did you, I think...
Yes, Chairman, it was, but I suspect I could probably ask the same question of Spiros.
Okay, I'll let you go first, Bert. Could you? I know you're not a committee member, but I do think it's important that you do ask the question. Okay. You've been waiting quite a long time.
Well, I just wanted to ask the question. It's very simple. Glenn Kaplan-Gray in his submission referred to the Truro Falmouth branch line and the accessibility and the traffic management and accessibility that provides between ourselves and our dear and close neighbour. And I just wondered if he was able to describe for members how far Truro Railway Station will be from the student accommodation and what the topography is like if you're walking in either direction. In other words, how many hills do you have to go up and down?
Okay, thank you. So can we get an answer to that one over Spiros or Glenn? I think Spiros will have to answer that one now.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The connections to the station in terms of walking distances relate, because of the topography, as Councillor Burt mentioned, between 10 and 15 minutes walk. And it's true, we do have significant topography in Truro, of course, so that actually could slow down the time. There is the opportunity for other public transport connecting to the site, and one of the key things, introducing all these new streets that link to the wider area, including the Victoria Park, which further down links to the station, will really help that connection and permeability.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Okay, I'll bring in now Councillor Olivia.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. I had a question about the hive, the proposed hive, what its maximum capacity is. How many people would you expect to be using it when it's working at full capacity? Is it too early to ask that question? I would have thought there must be some plan or intention along that line already. The other question I have for the Chair is, I think you said at the beginning, Chair, we had people from affordable housing present at this meeting. Are they going to speak a little bit later, and would it be possible to ask them questions?
Thank you. We'll get Spiros to answer that. I didn't mention we got people from the affordable housing. I didn't mention that in the meeting, but we will have officers that should be able to answer questions later when we have questions of officers. So Spiros, if you can answer the question on the Hive, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. As it's been mentioned, because this is an outline application, the exact design of the Hive obviously is to be determined through a detailed reserve matters application. However, the capacity in relation to 400 bed spaces gives us an indication of the number of students that potentially are associated with the Hive itself. But at this stage, at this early outline stage, we don't have an exact number of users. And as Glenn has mentioned earlier, the Falmouth University have been a key stakeholder on keep developing the detailed proposals that would emerge through a separate application.
Okay, yeah, I have to say, Chair, I'm surprised we can't be a little more definite at this stage, even if you can't be precise. I would have thought the proposal was a bit more developed than that, but thank you anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. I can't see any more hands up. Yes.
Chairman, Rowena Brebner, meeting producer. I can confirm that Mr. Kaplan-Gray is back in the meeting if there was a question for him to answer.
Mr. Kaplan-Gray, there was a question earlier from Councillor Alvey about the, I think it was about car parking spaces that were travelling into Truro and parking. Can you repeat your question, Councillor Alvey?
Certainly, Chair. So briefly, the question related to the discussion that already, or the responses that had already taken place, suggesting that people would be encouraged to use the park and ride. My question was, in assessing the parking in Truro and the current usage, has the direction of travel of the various vehicles been assessed, bearing in mind that a third of the traffic comes in on the Truro-Falmouth Road, A39, coming from Falmouth, Helston, and the various hinterlands of those settlements, and clearly pressurising that traffic to use the park and ride would actually be forcing it along the very roads that we're trying to reduce traffic, such as Green Lane, the road up to the Western Park and Ride, and indeed the road up Tresolles Road to the Eastern Park and Ride. And the other aspect of that question is, in assessing the current days when the car parking is full, did it take account of, for example, last summer when most wet days in August, all the car parking in Truro was fully occupied? Thank you.
Okay. Did you get all that?
I'm really
Hello,
sorry, Chair. I'm only hearing kind of every other word at the moment. I think the answer to the question is yes, we've assessed that in the independent travel plan, which forms part of the submission, which is in the paperwork, and is part of the transport modelling that we've done. So I think the answer is yes, and that's been accounted for. I'm sorry, I can't hear every other word. So it might be that you might be better directing that to Spiros, who can possibly hear a bit better. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Councillor David Harris wishes to ask you a direct question.
Thank you, Chair. A very specific question, actually. I'm rather confused. Is there still a plan for a community centre within the pilot development? Because when I look at the Truro Town Investment Plan, it's very vague as to whether in fact there isn't plans to put money into a community centre elsewhere. So can we be clear, is there still a plan for a community hall within this pilot development or not?
Okay, can you answer that? Nice, clear question.
Hello, Chair. I'm struggling to hear the questions. Apologies, the connection is breaking up. What was it, a question about the community facility?
Can you repeat it, Councillor Harris?
Yeah, and it's very much a question for Mr. Kaplan-Gray, I think, rather than for Spiros, although I admire him for volunteering. It's a very simple question. When I look at the Truro Town Investment Plan, it is very unclear as to whether there is still an intention to build a community hall within PIDAR, or whether in fact there isn't a plan to assist in developing something else within Truro. So my question is it still the intention that there will be a community centre delivered within the Pilot development or not?
Okay. Did you hear that? Spiros or Glenn?
Chairman Glenn has left the meeting again.
Okay. All right, it'll be Spiros then. Can Spiros answer that one?
Chairman, if you can hear me clearly, because my connection is still breaking up, I think if I understood the question related to if there is still the intention of the outline application bid forward to accommodate for the community facility within that development.
That's
and
right.
The answer to that is yes. As Glenn highlighted earlier again, there is a specific location that has been explored and an area within the actual outline development proposed.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that answers the question. Okay, right, we shall now move on to the local member. And the local member is Councillor Bert Biscoe. Can you hear me, Bert?
I can, Chairman. Can you hear me?
What I will do, because it's going to be a long day, I'm going to pin you down to 5 minutes.
I think I will be able to oblige you, Chairman.
Thank you.
For once in my life, I think I know how long it's going to take. So, I fully supported Cornwall Council in assembling all of this site under a single ownership. The fragmented ownership was a cruel legacy of local government reorganisation in 1974, a legacy which has made the community of Truro feel excluded from its town, unable to influence its evolution, and silenced in its many debates. So, the early days of this development were most promising. Hopes were raised. I support the principle of a mixed development and integrated expansion of the town centre, offering opportunity to Truro's dispossessed families to reclaim their town, and for new enterprises emanating from new digital creativity and young Cornish entrepreneurs. However, I find the current proposals do not fit my bill. This is an outline application to establish a volume of development which on a site in this location of this size at this time cannot realistically be viable, let alone accessible or attractive. As these plans have emerged, being driven less by principles of market-enabled well-being than simply by return, so they have parted company with realism and scale. I can find no justification for a diagonal road across a Truro hillside that proclaims that it is sympathetic to the grain and style of Truro. Is there any other roads like that in Truro that goes nowhere? This is a boulevard to Bondon Island, not a sensitive merging of town centre and Kenwyn Churchtown. In the 60s, we re-engineered Truro. We put the A39 on a bypass, our car parks on north and south inner distributor roads, and installed rear servicing for our central shopping area. We demolished Boscowan Bridge and Landers Fighting Cocks in the process. We, the whole community, took a huge risk, but we created value, employment, fulfilment. This is now the root of Truro's prosperity. It works as well now as it did then. St Clement Street is the northern inner distributor road, not as I said in my remarks in the planning officer's report. I got it wrong. A vital artery for our economy. This development proposes traffic calming that artery, but refuses to acknowledge that there is a future shaping opportunity to join with Langarth in beginning to develop a rail-based local service from the old cattle dock behind the Crown Court, which could really reduce traffic and enhance access. This scheme calls itself strategic, but isn't really thinking that way. It should do. The River Allen is a natural artery which roots this town, which may rekindle lost arts of energy generation one day, but which lends itself to the name Truro, 3 Rivers, and hosts a red list endangered species, and flows from the moors to meet the Truro and Fowl Rivers at Town Quay. Moving the Riverside Road, which is a traditional access to this site, and trying to create a leisure lido on the banks of the Allen means that the housing on Oak Way will only be accessed by intruding brutally on the quiet enjoyment of their homes by residents of Dover's Court. Never mind, though, they're only Truro. And what should we do, Chairman, about the red list endangered European eel? I consider this is an overdevelopment of the site, a high risk to the quality of the built heritage, including that of the late 20th century, by which I mean the Grade 2-star listed Crown Court, which ignores the grain of Truro. This does not feel viable. Where are the terraces following the Burgage line from road to river? Where are the materials of this place, overwhelmed by brick? Slight glimpses of the cathedral are not enough to make people feel that they're at home in Truro. Tall buildings, jealous of the viaduct, don't speak of fine architecture which we'll value like the Mansion House in 200 years' time. To be honest, it all speaks to me of desperation, of cramming in as much volume as possible, of trying to please too many masters, of overinflating the balloon, and it fails. So whilst I recognise and admire the dedication of all those who have worked on this proposal, I feel that their instructions and their instructors have been confusing, indecisive, and overly ambitious. For a local authority, value not only lies in profit,
5 minutes, Chair,
but in well-being, in social, economic, and environmental gain. One short paragraph. I am disappointed, and I encourage you strongly to send this back with a plea to listen, to allow Truro to breathe and evolve, and not to wake to an uninvited lump, an island in its midst. In its midst. Tell them to embrace Truro in all its diversity and beauty, not to look within, but over the bridge and down river to the world, to do something that we can all be truly proud of and feel part of, and in the process create a haven for that European eel which can help to get it off that red list and be a place which kids will yearn for no matter where they are all their lives. This is too much, Chairman, and not good enough.
Thank you, Bert. I still didn't believe you could do it in 5 minutes, and I'm through.
You know me better than I know myself, Chairman.
There you go. Well, thank you for that. The next speaker I have on the list is is Councillor Rob Nolan. Good morning, Rob.
Thank you, Chair.
As with Bert, I will limit you to 5 minutes and see if you can do better than Bert this time.
Thank you, Chair. Good to be back at the Strategic Planning Committee, I have to say. Members, as you know, this is a brownfield site near the city centre, derelict buildings which weren't attractive when they were first built. We can all agree the area needs regeneration, and as this is an outline planning application, we can agree to the application without being bound by the plan, the visualizations that you've seen. But this is our opportunity to comment on those visualizations for the benefit of the planners and the architects. There was good consultation, only 2 objections on the planning portal. And in fact, when I went along to the pop-up shop, a member of the public grabbed me and said, don't you lot block this, don't you lot stop this happening. But the plans have changed since they were first shown to the public. Just because we welcome the investment and we need the regeneration doesn't mean that we have to accept whatever the architects or planners come up with. Truro is a cathedral city. Cathedral dominates, you've heard that. The viaduct's an important view and can be seen from most places. This is on quite high ground, a very sensitive site. It mustn't be allowed to dominate the city centre and overwhelm the cathedral. At the moment it does. It's outlined so you can pass it, but I'd ask that you send a clear message to the planners and the architects that what you've seen is not acceptable. The maximums that they show us at the moment, if left to themselves, will become the realities. They're not what was first proposed. They're overwhelming, overdevelopment, and not fitting. And it's not just me or the other members of Truro City Council that have said that. It's your landscape officers, and your historic environment officers. So I'd like you to send a clear message if you could, please. The committee has already picked up on the loss of parking, which is a concern. I'm not convinced that 12% is insignificant. I think that's quite a major loss. Once this is built, the economic impact will be felt on the city and it will be good. But that little gap between us losing the car park and this being built, we need to mitigate it. So I'd ask that you ask the planners to mitigate that loss in the short term. Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm within my time.
Thank you very much for that, Rob. Next speakers have all these Truro councillors at the moment. Loic, Rick, you wanted to speak? Can you hear me, Loic?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll limit you to five minutes as well, if you can keep it in there, please.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, thank you. Yeah, so firstly, obviously this is a really, as Councillor Biscoe has pointed out, this area was previously inhabited and lots of people in Truro above a certain age will have very fond memories of what it was, and it's great that we are trying to return it as a residential to a certain degree. Although I do agree with Councillor Nolan, if you do pass it, if you could send a very, very clear message to the team about the overwhelming nature and height of the buildings. So firstly, I wanted just to say something about the incinerator in St Dennis. I remember the planning process for that. I wasn't a member of Cornwall Council then, but I did attend a lot of the meetings. I was very concerned about that. It was a very big strategic development. During the course of that design process for the incinerator, many promises were made about, or assurances that most of the waste would be delivered to that incinerator on the railway. You know, that's all we ever heard, how green it was going to be. And what happened when it was built? Diddly squat, nothing. All the waste to that incinerator is coming in on trucks. Why am I talking about that? Well, I'm making a comparison really. You know, my experience of the design process on this has been one of the worst experiences I've ever had as a councillor in terms of working with officers and outside contractors. I felt at many stages it was very, very difficult to make very clear and obvious points. One of them being that a railway runs right through this site. A 6-year-old designing this site would point that out. It's blindingly obvious that that is a opportunity to look at transport connections, especially when you're talking about getting rid of parking and pursuing the Truro transport strategy. So I was just absolutely perplexed why even every single meeting I went to when I pointed this out, it was never even noted. I had to go to the chief executive to try and get this through to the team. And finally, eventually, I think somewhere in this, you might see that there's a vague reference to preserving the land for a future railway connection on the site, which I think is pathetic. So I would really appreciate it if members of this committee could do what I believe any rational person observing this, a lay person, and send a very clear message to Treveth that they should make a much stronger commitment to rail connectivity on this site. And the commitment they've made so far is just insubstantial. It's going to get ignored. I mean, if the incinerator stuff got ignored, then this is definitely going to. And I did speak to somebody from Network Rail the other day with an officer of Cornwall Council, Tony Roach. I bumped into them before lockdown, and that the man was very excited about looking at some things that they could possibly do with PIDAR. And how Network Rail could maybe come up with some kind of feasibility study. So it's not pie in the sky, you know, it's not wishful thinking, it's something real that we could do about solving the problem, especially when you're looking at students coming from Truro to Truro. And as was pointed out previously, it's a good 15-20 minute walk in the rain. I mean, what are people going to do in Cornwall? Are they going to use public transport that they can't rely on, or jump in a car? They're probably going to do the latter. The next thing I want to make, I'd like to make, Chair, is in Truro at the moment there is a real crisis with private rentals. I spoke to an estate agent yesterday. A 2-bedroom flat that went on the market for rent got 164 phone calls. There is a real crisis right now at the moment, not just in Truro, across Cornwall. And one positive I'd like to tell members about, I think, is the Treveth are an idealistic company in the sense that they are trying to do something about the housing crisis in Cornwall. yes, there are affordable homes, but even the private market rent homes that will be available on the site, there will be a degree of idealism in when it comes to letting them out. I think they'll be prioritising local people, and these are local families that right now are in temporary accommodation because they cannot get anywhere to rent privately. I'm not talking about council houses. So I think potentially, you know, if you go around Truro, speak to people, they are absolutely desperate to be living in the city, and there is simply nowhere available to rent. And even these market rent homes, I think, will be a lot better than what's on offer at the moment in the private sector. But on the subject of idealism, Treveth also, there is a downside to the idealism in Treveth, and that's this kind of wanting to follow Cornwall Council transport policy word for word. Treveth are a developer, they are a company, they are not Cornwall Council. You know, there is a difference. So they do not have to pursue this kind of agenda of having to get rid of every single, you know, reduce car parking and trade and such.
Can you just sum up now, please?
Yeah. So with regards to the parking situation, the government is pursuing a green agenda for electric cars, electric vehicles. So what is the problem, Chair, in keeping the car parking? There is no problem if you look forward into the future when cars will be a lot greener. So I don't think the argument stacks up.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, next Councillor David Harris.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Harrison. Sorry about all the technical issues earlier with the planning agent, but if they can't hear you properly, it's not my fault. Anyway, if you can keep it pinned down to 5 minutes, please, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, thank you. This area is immediately adjacent to my division. I don't hold myself out as a planning expert. I'm happy to leave it to others to comment on the broader aspects. However, there are two particular aspects related to this application that cause me great concern. Firstly, the economics of the whole scheme, which I appreciate are not for this committee. Secondly, as others have already noted, and I apologise for going back to it, but I think it's key, is the parking issue. These proposals contain provision for 320 homes, 400 bed spaces for students, and a hotel of, say, 100 rooms. And yet the plans only contain provision for 180 parking spaces, of which only 100 will be allocated to the residential units. I am assuming that a large part of the other 80 will be allocated to the hotel. And at the same time, the proposals result in a loss of 695 parking spaces. The report that you have suggests that taking away the existing parking spaces would cause a shortage of parking spaces during the run-up to Christmas and on 3 other days. A total, we have told elsewhere, of 21 days. This, of course, is before taking into account the demand for parking from occupiers of what is to be built, the offices that it hoped will be occupied. We all aspire to a greener, carbon neutral environment, but we have to be realistic here and accept that a significant majority of these new homes will have or want a car, as will at least some of the students who were going to be occupying these student blocks. And under the current proposals, no provision is being made for them, noting, of course, the proposal that they also be excluded from any local resident parking zones. I also wonder where police vehicles that currently use the viaduct car park will park. We all aspire to a thriving Truro. This means getting people into Truro and making it relatively easy for them. I hear what people say about the park and ride, but I'm sorry, if I have a choice of visiting 2 towns or cities, I know I will pick the one where parking is easiest, and that isn't park and ride. So my real question is, are we happy that taking away the existing parking spaces, while at the same time increasing demand from new residents, will not have the effect of making Truro relatively less attractive to shoppers and visitors from out of town? So I wonder if, when I say if, this committee is minded to support this development, it might make any approval subject to the applicants going away and coming back with proposals that deal with the 2 separate parking issues of visitors to Truro and those occupying these new buildings, and in particular asking the developer to reconsider the plans for the viaduct car park and not to go and demolish it in short order. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for keeping it within 5 minutes. Are there any other Truro councillors that need to come in? I can't see any hands up. So what I will do now, Dulcie Tudor. You wish to speak, Dulcie? Councillor Tudor?
Yes.
Okay. I'm asking councillors to keep within 5 minutes, if you can, please.
Quick. Thanks, because I think that committee members are really sort of getting a flavour of the field with the local councillors at the moment.
You're breaking up quite a bit. Can you speak closer to the mic?
How's that? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying mine's pretty short because I think people are getting, members are getting a flavour of the feel about this from the local councillors. So I'll keep it really short. You know, I'm not against the development on this site. And certainly not against something modern and forward thinking and vibrant. And I think everybody agrees that building out something on this site is better than leaving it as it is. But that doesn't mean that the council, Treveth, should have carte blanche to ignore national and local planning policies. I'm very much in favour of students being based in the city and bringing their economic benefits to Truro that they do in Falmouth. They're certainly going to improve the nightlife. And I know that the university's own business plan means it needs a presence on that site as much as the council needs them to be there. But as a member of Truro City Council, I can reliably tell you, well, you've already heard there's a lot of concern among the councillors about this application in terms of the lighting, the open space, the affordable housing and the parking. And as someone who lives quite near this PIDAR site, I'm worried particularly where the students are going to end up parking. Well, I think I know. So my experience of being on the MOU, or the Memorandum of Understanding group working with the architects and developers, you know, in this case the council on this project, has been disappointing to say the least. I don't think any of us on that MOU group feel that our opinions and suggestions as consultees were fully taken on board or were taken on board. It mirrored my experience of being on the stakeholder group for the Langarth project, interestingly. I've heard other city councillors, and you've heard ward members point out this application doesn't comply with the MPPF or the Truro and Kenwyne Neighbourhood Plan. And that's something I'm hoping members of the committee take very seriously. Cornwall Council, being the developer, I understand that puts our planning arm in a difficult position, but I can't help thinking that if this plan had been submitted by a private developer, it certainly wouldn't have been recommended for approval. And I just want to draw your attention to the promised community facility on the site, which we've been told is in the plans. This site is on public land, and that means it belongs to all of us, everyone in Truro and all the people in Cornwall. And it's very much the wish of local councillors that a public community facility be included, a community centre. And some of us have been shown the detailed drawings of the community centre and the auditorium that the university would use as well. And we were hoping that there'd be a way to fund that through the Truro Town deal, but we were told we couldn't because it wouldn't be built in the time frame that would match the criteria for the town deal money. So you can imagine our surprise when we saw the town investment plan did include the Hive, which is a commercial project on the PIDA development. So I really don't understand how that could have happened. I am really concerned that the community centre won't be delivered, as it doesn't appear to be a priority of the council or Treveth. And I hope that members of the committee are going to use this opportunity in the following debate to scrutinise this application thoroughly and seek conditions to secure a community centre on this public land. You know, you're being asked to weigh up the benefits of the scheme, and I'm going to appeal to members of the committee to make sure that the development favourably benefits the residents of Truro and of Cornwall, who absolutely should be our primary consideration as the local and the authority and developer. Overall, I just feel that we could do better than this.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, that's all the Truro members that have indicated they wish to speak. We will now open it for questions of officers to the planning committee members. Questions of officers to Nicholas?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, could somebody explain to me why you are reducing the number of parking spaces and referring to the park and ride when in fact the park and ride closes at 8:30 in an evening. The hall for Cornwall has been closed for the last 2 years and is increasing its capacity to 1,300 and odd people. So how are you going to reduce car parking spaces and yet allow the night economy in Truro to thrive alongside the increased capacity of the hall for Cornwall and all the residential?
Okay, which officer is going to answer that one?
Hi there, Chair. I'm happy to answer that. Yes, on the park and ride, there is permission to extend the opening hours, which will be brought in due course, post-COVID, I would guess. With obviously nighttime economy, there's a significant amount of parking available in the evenings, because the peaks of the car parks are sort of midday, as shown in the transport assessment that supported the application. So I wouldn't have any concern that there wouldn't be available parking for the evening. On that note,
can I just come back on that?
You can come back soon.
Yeah, if you've got all these residential properties that you're going to put in and you're reducing all the car parks, so you're only going to provide 100, and there's 1,300 possible people coming into Truro to see the hall for Cornwall, not to mention the students that are moving in and out. I don't see that stacks up at all.
Well, there's obviously the council-owned car parks, including the park and rides, but there's also the private car parks such as Lemon Key and High Cross. And High Cross's capacity is, I've got the amounts here, is 451, and that's running at a very low occupancy. So there is a significant amount of parking still available after this, after these car parks are removed. I've got the numbers here. If you take out the park and rides, you've got so you've got 5,666 at the moment. If you take out the park and rides, that's about 2,500, so that leaves about 3,000, and this is taking out 600, so probably got 2,500 parking spaces still. That includes the private car parks as well as the council car parks.
Okay, I think that's answered that one. Councillor Olivia.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to follow up the point about the affordable housing element of the scheme, if there's an officer present who's able to answer the question. Simply, could we get a guarantee that the 35% of affordables will, as much as possible, the intention will be to make them as much as possible rented social housing and as little as possible discounted sale?
Who's going to answer that one?
I'm happy to do so, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so in terms of the heads of terms of the Section 106 instruction, the negotiation has been on the basis of, as you say, 35% affordable housing, of which the majority will be both affordable and social rent. There is some flexibility in there to be able to adjust it accordingly, but what we're looking at the parameters of a minimum of 60% affordable rent, maximum of 70%, with the remainder being intermediate forms. And our preference in terms of intermediate sale accommodation is for shared ownership rather than discount market sale.
Yeah. Right, well, thank you for that. I think you, Mr. Marsden, you may have heard Councillor Rich earlier referring to the problems about rented accommodation and housing in Truro. So I think you can see that the need is for social rents as much as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. And in terms of the private sector rented element of the scheme, that will probably incorporate a local lettings plan as well to ensure that those with a local connection, etc., will receive some priority.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Any other questions of officers? I can't see any hands up. Any other questions, officers? No hands up. Okay. We'll now go on to debate. Who wishes to start? Councillor Olivia. Councillor Oliver, you want to start the debate?
Yeah, hello, Chair. I'll start the ball rolling, though I appreciate there are a number of members present who know this area better than I do. I had to express my incredulity that so many people who voted for Cornwall Council to declare a climate emergency are now obsessing about car parking spaces in a city that has access to park and rides, a station within convenient walking distance of the town centre, and a very good and regular bus service. I really don't get it. You know, that we may have voted for a climate emergency, but clearly the concept, you know, is only pretty superficially embraced by a lot of members of this council. So I completely reject the concerns about parking that have been put forward. I think they're nonsense. I also think that going on a lot about talking too much about electric cars as if we don't need to worry about encouraging people to use public transport anymore because all cars are going to be electric shows a misunderstanding of all the arguments about ecology, the environment and green issues. So I'd make that clear. On this question of, you know, a number of people have not unreasonably put forward their preference for discrete organic growth. Well, all I can say is clearly the architect of the cathedral wasn't interested in either of those concepts, because I wouldn't call the cathedral is marvellous, but it's not discrete and organic, I think it's fair to say. So I have no problem with a bold development. I hope that the concerns being raised by local members in Truro are taken account of. I think they're important, but I have to say, if you offered many other towns in Cornwall, including my own, Penzance, 400 bed student accommodation with an academic and innovation facility accompanying it, we'd take your arm off. So I'm minded to support this application, but wish the concerns raised by local members to be taken into account, because I accept that they've got the local knowledge that I don't have in quite the same way. Thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Can I, with regards to the traffic issues, completely agree with what Councillor Olivier has just said, especially with the fact that do we want to take our climate emergencies obligation seriously? If we do, we should be looking to encourage people to use public transport, but of course at the same time we want to maintain a viability and vibrancy in Truro City. You know, we all know congestion is a big issue with Truro, and with that comes pollution. So I think other alternatives are there. The train station is, I think, 800 yards away. I accept it's a bit hilly, but for a student type of grouping or community, I think that would be adequate. We have the park and ride, which is good. This provision, I would imagine, as has been said, if the need is there, could be increased. So it is a sustainable location. We all know the issues that our towns and cities have at the moment. Many are struggling, if not failing. So one way to encourage growth within them is to get people living in the towns and the cities. So I think that's a positive. If we can dual purpose business with housing, that's great. 35% affordable housing in the mix is policy compliant. So that hopefully would encourage us keeping local Cornish people living local in our capital. Now, the one concern I do have is with regards to, I think it was Councillor Biscoe and Councillor Nolan, who both spoke very admirably, is the scale and massing of this scheme. I'm just wondering, as this is an outline application and to get things moving, what can we do with regards to, if we were to support this, to ensure that the site isn't maxed out? Because I think I think that is an issue. So I don't know if anybody has any suggestions.
We'll find out. Councillor Dyer, can you stop sharing your screen, please? We can see everything you're doing. Only speakers who want to share a screen, please. Councillor Nicholas.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have grave concerns about the height and the scale and the closeness of these developments. There's already in the report areas where it says that tree planting wouldn't be sustainable because of overshadowing, and so would some of the public realm. You've got an awful lot of overshadowing it. And it also takes away the historic area, I think, and the views of the historic parts of Truro, for which it is really well known. Going back to the parking, I don't agree with Councillor Olivia. You want to try and getting bus transport from where I live out into Truro. It takes you all day virtually to get there, never mind anything else. And if we're going to have at least 25% of dwellings will meet accessibility, then there's a big issue about parking and where disabled parking is going to be situated. We do play at the green environment because, you know, we've got a forest for Cornwall, and yet we're allowing developers to cut down trees and take away existing mature trees. So I think that is not sustainable in terms of being a green area. So I think generally I would like to see a better plan than this. I think it's all very much in the air about what might or might not happen. There doesn't seem to be very much concrete detail in it, which I would expect at least in some detail in an outline. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next speaker is Councillor Jackie Bull.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I think Councillor Parsons has picked up on an important point, and that is that we almost have to look at outline and reserve matters separately. Now, outline, yes, I agree. But in terms of the indicative plans that we've been shown, I'm really disappointed, to be honest. I think it's out of character. I want to just refer back a moment, Chairman, to the development on the other side of Truro, which I actually voted against at the time, above Morrison's. But now as I drive towards Truro and I see those houses, which are quite tall, and I'm driving towards Truro, I think they give a sort of Georgian aspect almost. And I've always thought that Truro has some element of being a miniature Bath, in that as you walk around Truro, it's not just a shopping experience, is it? It's architecturally pleasing, it's aesthetically pleasing. And going back to the shopping experience, Truro becomes much more important as actual physical shopping lessons. And so Truro is very much belongs to all of us, is our main city. I will be very disappointed if we don't make some comments as a committee that the design, which creates such massing and bulk, without, in my opinion, some more pleasing design elements within the scheme, isn't looked at again. The question that I've read this morning in the report is harm less than substantial in relation to heritage assets? At the moment, I don't see that. I do agree with outline permission, but I don't see that the design of the scheme has been what I would expect in order to create kind of place shaping that council aspires to at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Councillor Graham Code.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, excellent. I've been in touch with Truro for many, many years. Growing up in West Cornwall, Truro was the place to go. I had relatives there I've stayed with, and from childhood I've explored the city and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's got loads of parts which are, well, simply and honestly, beautiful. There's a style to it. There's an elegance. Councillor Bull just compared it with a sort of a mini bath. That's accurate. It's nice, it's stylish, it's smart. And I don't see that what has been proposed as indicative development stuff is at all suitable. Furthermore, I got this issue with outline planning. When someone submits an outline plan, which has just got a red line and an empty space inside it, I'm quite happy with that. You know, we can sort of say, yes, we accept the principle of development. Excuse me, that's my computer going off. We can accept the principles of development, and we'll decide on the details later on certain matters. Excellent. But here, like in other cases where you've got very strongly presented indicative.
You're breaking up quite a bit, Councillor Coe.
Sorry, my computer's giving some stupid notifications. It'll stop in a second. If we approve this and allow this, then the discussions and negotiations start from the indicative drawings that we've seen today, and they will subtract a bit here, subtract a bit there. So I'm not happy. Secondly, losing the 700 capacity car park in exchange for 100 and odd is absolute madness. We will have green cars, we will have hybrid cars, we will have electric cars, we will have all the remaining petrol and diesel cars that Cornish people on low wages can't get rid of and can't afford the green stuff. And there's going to be an absolute need. When the university was built down at Falmouth Penryn, and there was a principle that there was going to be low car use and just for cycles and walking, which was fine until all the students turned up with cars and parked all over every available space down at Penryn. There was considerable public excitement at how that was affecting the town. Cornwall is a low-wage area. Truro depends on people coming from all areas of Cornwall to use its services, its shopping and its entertainment stuff. And many of us have to have cars because of personal circumstances, where we live, how we need to get to and from work and other services. And many of the ideas of, oh, there will be fewer cars because of whatever, is really policy of wishful thinking rather than being practical and realistic. So I can't support this at all. I can't even support this as an outline planning application because it is tantamount to accepting the idea of the indicative drawings and plans that we've seen. Thank you. I can't support this.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I switched on?
You're switched on. Councillor Coe can turn his screen off, please.
Thank you. I don't like to put the screen on. That's not a pretty sight, but I will. I can't support this scheme either, Mr. Chairman. The car parking issue is not particularly a Truro Central issue. I've always called myself a rural member, and my division wraps itself right around Truro, almost north-south. But the rural people need the parking. It's the rural people Truro will not survive without, and they need the support of the rural people. And diminishing the car parking in Truro is a very serious issue if you are a Truro centred need for shopping purposes. We can't live with this significant reduction in the parking spaces. Representing the village of Eadless, as I do at the moment, the lanes out from Moresk in Truro are sometimes, no, often cluttered with commuter parking. Why? Because they can't park in the town at a sensible price, and it is killing the lanes, it is killing the rural people from coming to Truro. Many people in my division that goes right out to Chiverton, of course, tell me they go to Tesco Extra in Redruth to do their shopping because they can go to that property, do their shopping, be home again before they can battle to get into Truro on the A390. And the park and ride car park on the A390, as Councillor Alvey said just now, is a battle both ways, a battle to get out from the A39 along the A390 to the park and ride car park, and a battle to get back when you've got there. It's a road that is grossly overloaded today, let alone any of the Landgarth development that this council is also pushing. And I will not support the abolition of the viaduct car park in any way, shape or form. You've not catered for those cars of the people that you're going to bring to this area to live, and you're not certainly catering for the rural people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Dyer. Any other speakers? Any other planning committee members need to make a comment?
Can't see any listed, Chairman.
I can't say. Right, thank you for that, and thank you for the debate. We do have.
Chair, I did put my hand up.
Yeah, Councillor Rand, I see your hand up now.
Thank you. I've listened very carefully to the comments, particularly from the Truro councillors, and it concerns me, the comments that people have made about the attractiveness of the city as it stands. I totally agree with. I like going to Truro when I can, but I am a rural councillor, and when I come in to Truro, I invariably park at the Pydor car park. It suits me, and it's always convenient, and I find it easy to get there. And the other thing is, because I tend to be a busy person, I just can't settle at park and rides, waiting around or waiting to get to park and ride to pick my car up. I just want to get back to my car with my shopping and go home. So for me, I don't like the car parking aspect. What I noticed from the early part of this presentation was the maps of the structures. I know they're only sort of outline structures, but I thought to myself, my goodness me, they're too big. They're overpowering. So I don't like that. I totally agree that this area needs to be redeveloped. I just don't like the design. I worry about the parking, and I don't think I can support it. So I absolutely back the comments of the town the councillors, Councillor Biscoe, Lorick, and all the others. I agree with them. So I can't support it as it stands at the moment. Though I do feel that this area needs to be developed, but it should be done more sympathetically. And actually, when I go back to strategic planning meetings, gosh, over a year, maybe 18 months ago, when we had an outline of this, the design seems to have changed enormously. It looked really good when I saw the first drafts of this. So I can't support it as it is. I'm sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rand, and thank you for those comments. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on this one?
I do have my hand up, Chair.
I can't see your hand up.
It's showing raised at this end anyway.
Okay.
Oh, just a
right,
second. There we
okay.
are.
It is now, Councillor Batters. It's up now.
Thank you very much.
I'll bring you in.
Thank you very much. I haven't got a lot to say other than the fact that Truro is somewhere that I quite often visit for one reason or another, quite regularly with regards to theatre use when it's up and running. And also, I've gone down to Truro for various other things, but my visits to Truro have always been in and out, really. I've gone in, got what I wanted, gone again. And it does concern me somewhat with regards to the parking. I would not consider park and ride to go into Truro to buy something and be gone in an hour. So it does concern me that this parking could become an issue. And if you've got students with all their cars and additional vehicles in the town centre, one does have to wonder where the parking may lead to. I've heard what Councillor Biscoe, Nolan and Rich have said. I think all three of them spoke very well indeed on Truro, past and present. But at this moment in time, I'm inclined not to support this application as it stands at the moment, because I do have the concerns over the parking. But I'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Batters. Councillor Olivia?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, because it hasn't been said during the debate, how much I agree and approve of the council, Cornwall Council, taking the initiative on this project to make something happen. So I think regardless of whatever individuals think of the results, the actual strategy has been right, that the council should take the lead to make something happen. And I hope we're all ready to acknowledge that. I would also finally say, if people have strong objections to this proposal because of the design, that's one matter. To oppose it because of car parking concerns just makes a laughing stock out of this council's declaration of climate emergency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I can't see any other speakers. I will say a few things myself, actually, because I do fully respect the Truro councillors' views on this, because you would hope, and I think most of them support something happening here because it is an eyesore, and you would have hoped that they would have been taken on board, and the developer taken on board their comments. But I also look at over the last 12 months how shopping practices have changed, how big department stores are shut down, and will they come back to the high street in the way that they were before? Because people have now turned to a whole different mode of shopping, and without people actually living in Truro, that footfall for those people, even those ones that worked in the shops, actually bought and spent things in the town. So always call Truro a town, don't call it a city. Fair about the viability of keeping Truro buoyant if we haven't got people working and living within the town. So, you know, it does concern me. But this is the first major application we've seen on this site, and it's quite exciting and you know, innovative, and there's lots of good things with it. So I think parking is an issue that people have raised. I can remember when you know, the key by the Hall for Cornwall was a quayside, and that was filled in for car parking. That car parking they've gone. That's more open space where they have the farmers market and other markets now. So people can adapt, but the and the park and rides are being well used. But will they be used late into the night? I don't know. But all that's about change, isn't it? And do we accept this radical change that's going to happen in Truro? So they're my views, and I can fully understand the concerns that Truro members are raising. So they're just my observations. Councillor Rand, you've come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back very quickly on those comments. I like Councillor Batters, love the idea of Hall for Cornwall opening and shows. I was born in the West End of London. I love all of that sort of entertainment, and when the hall is open, I certainly will want to be going back there as often as I can. I also wanted to make the point that one of your largest stores in Truro is the M&S store, and even though you've got one on the A30 at the village there, it has outperformed other M&S stores in its size and capacity despite COVID. You know, it is, people love to go into Truro and do shopping, and that store, even though it's obviously had to restrict its clothing and homeware stuff, has been outperforming other stores, M&S stores. So I honestly believe on the back of that, people will still want to come back as soon as they can. It's got a lovely mix of stores, and it's a nice place to come. It reminds me, not so much of Bath, because although I've been there often, it reminds me of Guildford in Surrey, which I used to love to go to, and miss very much. So I wouldn't worry so much about people coming back. I think they'll love to come back, and especially if we can keep the style and character of the place as it expresses now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder if you could ask the senior officer, Matt Stevenson, just to remind us what we are and are not voting on this application, please.
Okay, I shall bring in the officer to remind people what they are voting on this one.
Okay, I wasn't aware there was a resolution yet before.
No, we aren't voting. No one put forward a proposal. Recommendation on 4.1 is outlined with all matters reserved for up to 320 dwellings. You know, so you can either support that, but there hasn't been any recommendation yet, or you can refuse it.
Can I come back? What I think might be helpful, Chairman, is that people are blurring very much outline with design, etc., etc. I wonder if Matt could just clarify for us all, please, on the scope of the vote.
Okay.
Right. Well, I suppose it's more, rather than scope of the vote, it's more what is an outline application, or what is before you now, what you're making a decision on. Is that fair? If yeah. So, probably the thing to explain would be the difference between a parameter plan and an illustrative image. The parameter plans do set the scale of the development, and that's why they're referred to in paragraph 135 and conditions 3 and 7. They set the maximum parameters. So you are looking at that under this outline consent. You've also been shown some indicative images. They're different to parameter plans. They're indicative, and they show you possible details of design, and some elements of that obviously would come forward as part of the reserve matters. But again, a lot of that is also set in the design codes that you're looking at under this outline planning permission. So this outline consent actually includes a lot of detail to do with scale and design coding, which if you approve it today, you would be committing this to. I hope that helps.
Okay. Did you understand that, Councillor Ball?
Yes, I did. I thought it would be helpful for all of us, yes.
Okay. So do we have a recommendation from the committee at the moment? No one's proposed or seconded anything yet. Councillor Dyer, you got your hand up?
I will now then propose, but with the parameters of design and guide that were presented to us this morning, that these proposals are not acceptable in their total form to this committee this morning, and I so move.
Sorry, Councillor Dyer, Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services here. Are you proposing that the application is refused? And if so, can you just elaborate the planning reasons why you are recommending refusal?
I am proposing that the application be refused on the design and development of the site as presented to us today, to have significant implications on the grade 2 listed buildings we've also looked at. I am supporting that with my concerns about the aspects of travel into Truro, and the Truro will not survive, as I've often said, without the support of the hinterland, of the rural members, and they need somewhere to put their vehicles, whether they be electric proposed, jet proposed, steam proposed, or any other method of automation under the sun. It's unacceptable into the future of Truro, and I so move.
I think Councillor Dyer is actually referring to loss of car parking spaces, Sarah.
Councillor Dyer, can you confirm that's your second reason, the loss of parking spaces to visitors and residents to Truro?
Yes, of course, it's a part of my recommendations for refusal.
Okay. We got Councillor Graham Coe, you got your hand up?
Yes, I second Councillor Dyer's motion for refusal.
Okay, thank you. And you're clear on what reasons he's proposed?
Yes, I agree with those and a few others as well.
Thank you. Councillor Olivia?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, I was going to move the recommendation, but I couldn't get me button up in time. So Councillor Dyer beat me to it. But if Councillor Dyer's proposal for refusal essentially is fails, then I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, before we go to the vote, no one else wishes to speak. So we've got a proposer and seconder for refusal. Can you just read out those reasons for refusal, Sarah?
Yes, if I could just ask a few from the from the planning group leader as well on the refusal, just a view. So we've had a proposal for refusal that the design and development of the site as presented in the report has significant implications on the locality and grade 2 listed buildings. And alongside that, there are concerns that the removal of parking spaces will have a significant impact on Truro, on travel into Truro.
Okay, thank you for that. I think members are aware of that now. Matt Doble, did you indicate you wanted to come in?
Yeah, probably I would as well, Chair, if that's okay. In the first, sorry, it's Matt Stevenson.
Okay, thank you.
The first reason Councillor Dyer referred to was design and of the scheme, but I kind of feel the discussion was more to do with the scale of the development. So maybe some clarity around that. And then he went on to talk about the impact on grade 2 listed buildings being the only thing mentioned, but clearly there's other listed buildings and it's the conservation area as well. So it's very well, the scope of his reason for refusal wasn't very wide, and I just wondered if he wanted to comment on that or if other members did.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, we're a bit more aware of how the wording should be now. Councillor Parsons, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just to follow on from what Mr. Stevenson has said. I'm not sure quite how we can object on grounds of design when we don't really have any design grounds.
No, and I think that's why I was trying to refer back to scale, because obviously we do know what the scale is in terms of the parameter plans, so that's why I was trying to draw it back to that a little bit.
Yeah, I was sat here thinking it, but I was waiting for some professional guidance to come in before I said anything. But I don't think the reasons are. I think the intentions are good, but the reasons in front of us at the moment aren't wholly acceptable. So they possibly ought to be added to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholas?
Would it not need something about the impact on the characteristics of the area? And I think it's to do with the parameters that are too high and in the designs.
Okay, you're talking about scale and impact, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And kind of like the overbearing on other listed buildings in the area.
Okay. All right. Councillor Batters.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did say earlier that I was feeling inclined not to support this, but I find it difficult not to. Sorry, I said earlier I was inclined towards refusal of this, but I'm finding it difficult really at the moment to go down that road. I don't know. I mean, very little has been said about the listed buildings this morning. I mean, we're suddenly bringing these listed buildings in as a reason, yet I can't recall many, even of the local members, saying much about the listed buildings as being in close proximity and affected by this. But I feel it's a difficult one in so much that I'm saddened by the parking issues here, which I think could cause problems in later times. But at the same time, I don't know that I can go against the application. So although I said I was inclined to go against it, I don't think it's going to be strong enough at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jackie Ball.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to ensure, please, my own objections are simply that the design is out of character with Truro. Is that implicit enough within the words that are being used?
Right.
Perhaps Matt could come back on that one.
Can you come back on that one, Matt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, most of the debate seemed to centre around the scale and the massing was inappropriate to the townscape and the character of the area, including the conservation area. That seemed to be what I picked up from the members' debate. So I would have thought wording along those lines might be more appropriate to the debate that was had.
But I wanted to, in no doubt, go back to the developer that design has been questioned all morning. I wonder if Councillor Dyer would just also add the word design in please. I'm just wondering that.
Well, Councillor Dyer did mention design. It was myself who brought up the issues about massing and scale.
Well, would you mind putting the word design in, please, as well?
As I say, I think John did mention that in the first
instance. John?
Yes, Councillor Ball, sorry, it's Sarah Goodall here. I think the question that we need to ask Councillor Dyer is he has mentioned design of the site, but I think what Matt is saying is that the issues, and I concur with Mr. Stevenson's comments, have been around the maximum scope, the massing of the development. So I think the question needs to be, Mr. Dyer, whether or not he will take on board the comments around, and if we frame a recommendation including those comments made today around scale and massing, whether or not that would be acceptable to Councillor Dyer and his seconder, Councillor Code. Would you agree with that, Matt Stevenson?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Dyer, you happy to take them on board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm thankful for the guidance and support that I've received since making the proposal, but the whole thing is just too much.
All right. Okay, could you unshare your screen now, please, Mr. Dyer? Councillor Code?
Yes, as a seconder, I agree with what has been added to Councillor Dyer's submission. I would also like to add the word or the phrase, if it's appropriate, that the design parameters as presented, as attached to this application, are my reason for not, one of my reasons for wanting to second it, and that includes the massing and the scale, the loss of car parks.
And if I could just check with you, Councillor Code, is why the design parameters, including the scale and the mass, are unacceptable to you? Why is it? What's the impact of that? If you could just clarify that for me.
Okay, it's too large, it's too intrusive into Truro's streetscape, and it's out of character with the city. Deathly silence.
Sorry, I was just writing it down and I'll read it back to you 1 second.
Okay, go on.
We'll move on to some others in a minute. We'll Well, Sarah's writing that down. Councillor Ball, you still got your hand up? Oh, it's gone now. Okay, Councillor Olivia.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point to members that the impression I have is that the outline permission gives quite a lot of room for further negotiation and discussion and modification of design. That's the outline permissions are supposed to work like that. So I think everybody needs to keep that in mind before they vote, because I accept that it's perfectly reasonable for people to have concerns about the design, but I don't think an outline prevents those concerns from being met, except concerns about car parking, which are a load of rubbish.
Okay, no, in your opinion. Matt Stevenson, I'll bring you back in a minute.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I've already explained about parameter plans and how they would set out in the conditions. I mean, obviously the alternative outcome from today would be to defer it to see whether or not the developer would go back and revisit those parameter plans and come back in with something in terms of reduced scale or massing. So that option is there for members as an alternative to refusal today.
Thank you for that. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Olivier's beaten me to it again today. Basically, I was going to say something similar in the fact that if this outline was supported today, obviously we have set a little bit of a precedent for the scale and the mass, but if a reserved application came in that wasn't acceptable, that can be thrown out or refused, the same as any other application. So I think today's was only really setting a scene to move the whole project forwards. But having said that, I'm not comfortable with the parameters that have been put in. So if anybody was minded to second a deferral, I would be happy to, if what's on the table fails, I would be happy to put forward a motion for deferral or a recommendation for deferral.
Thank you for that. Councillor Batters.
Yes, well, Councillor Parsons has beat me on that one as well, because having heard what Matt just said, I would be looking towards possible deferral. So should we go down that road, I'll happily second Councillor Parsons' proposal on that.
Great, thank you. Matt Stevenson, you still got your hand up?
Oh, I'm very sorry, Chair. I'll take it down.
All right. Jackie Ball, you got your hand up?
Go to the vote.
No, I did, Chairman. The last two speakers, Adrian and Chris, have picked up on what I've been thinking all the way through, actually. But the parameters seem a bit wider than we're usually used to at outline. That just feels that way to me. I am still disappointed and hope that might make the minutes that design is unsympathetic, because I think that's a major message to go back to the developers, and I don't feel reassured enough with what I've heard this morning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I will now move to the vote. This has had a really long and good debate on this one. We have a recommendation before us, and do you want to read out the recommendation now, Sarah? Now you've got it all written down.
Sarah Goodall, Democratic Services. I'll try, Chairman. We have a proposal by Councillor Dyer, seconded by Councillor Coe, to refuse the application because of the scale and mass of the development as set out in the design parameters in the report are too large, too intrusive into streetscape, and will have a negative impact on the character of the city of Truro. And the negative impact of the loss of parking spaces on visitors and residents of the city. And that's our proposal. I second. Hopefully members will all understand that. So I will call you now in turn, members, and if you could state if you are voting for, against.
Wait, Matt Doble's got his hand up now. Quickly, Matt, we are going to the vote.
Yeah, it's just to say on the parking the parking reason that's been drafted. Obviously, the recommendation from ourselves is that from a transport point of view, this is acceptable, and obviously potentially here we would struggle to defend that reason.
Okay.
So it's just to make members aware of that, really.
All right. Okay.
Chairman, if I could just interject, sorry, Ben from Legal, I was going to make that point as well. Now, I understood that perhaps parking had fallen away from the reason, but we certainly can't support that on policy, as Matt said. So I'm not advising that we go down the parking route.
Chairman, can I just put back to Councillor Dyer and Councillor Codes? Is that explanation from the senior legal officer and the planning officer? Would you be content to remove your second recommendation around parking on your proposal to refuse?
No, ma'am, I wouldn't, because it's fundamental to the future of Truro and its trading.
And also from me, parking is still an issue. I believe that the policy in this case is wrong. It's been a false and an inaccurate assessment of what the effects will be, and I still would like that to be a reason.
I've noted that for the minutes, Chairman. So
okay, right. We will now go to the vote.
So members, you are voting for, against or abstaining on refusal of the application as per the reasons that I have recently read out. I'll call you in alphabetical order. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Batters.
Against and recorded, please.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Code.
For.
Councillor Dyer.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Foot.
Against.
Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Kasmarak.
Against.
Councillor Long.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas.
For.
Councillor Olivier.
Against.
Councillor Parsons.
Oh, sorry, against.
And Councillor Rand.
For.
1 second, Chairman.
6-9.
Yes, Chairman, the application has been refused on a vote of 6 votes. Sorry, 9 votes. 9 votes for the refusal, 6 votes against, and Councillor Batters, I've recorded your vote.
Okay, thank you for that. We will now, I think, after having that long debate, have a comfort break. I think we're entitled to that, aren't we, Sarah?
Yes, Chairman.
You're breaking up?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, I suggest you have a break now. What time would you like us to reconvene?
Well, shall we come back at 1 o'clock? Gives us time to have something to eat.
Okay, members, that's fine. We'll adjourn now till 1 o'clock. If you could please ensure that your microphones and cameras are switched off, please. And I will do a roll call at 1 o'clock before we recommence the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
you've got that on, I'm going to bring this lot in here, see if I can sort this out this afternoon.
Councillor Dyer, can you stop sharing your screen?
Mark, can we just make sure it's noted that Councillor Batters has given his apologies and had to leave the meeting as he has to chair a Devon and Cornwall Police panel meeting this afternoon?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Well, Sarah's going to do a roll call in a minute.
Mr. Chairman, it's 1 o'clock. Are you content for me to just do a quick roll call?
Yes, please, Sarah.
Okay, members, who could just confirm that you were still present at the meeting. Councillor Bastin.
Yes, still here, Sarah.
Councillor Bull.
Yes, still here, Sarah.
Councillor Code.
Yes, present.
Councillor Dyer.
Present.
Councillor Evans.
Still here, Sarah.
Councillor Foot.
Present.
Councillor Greenslade.
Present.
Councillor Hurd.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Kasmarek.
Present.
Councillor Long. Councillor Andrew Long, are you present, Councillor Long? We'll come back to Councillor Long. Councillor Nicholas?
Yes, still here.
Councillor Olivier?
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Parsons?
Present.
Councillor Rand?
Present.
Councillor Long, are you present at the meeting?
I am indeed, yes. My
Thank you very
apologies.
much. Yes, Chairman, I confirm we have all the members present apart from Councillor Batters, who, as pointed out by Councillor Parsons, has had to leave for other council business.
Right, okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Welcome back to the meeting. And just remind members if they can turn their mobile phones off, and if they can keep their mics muted and their screens off while other people are talking, then yeah, please do that. Item 4.2 on the agenda. PA 20/05161, North Quay Road, Hale Harbour, Hale, pages 159 to 213. I did want to, before this is presented, bring in Mark Brumhead, who does need to inform councillors what's happening with this before we go into full discussion. Okay, so I'll bring you in, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'd like to draw your attention to the addendum and in particular the comments received from ICOMOS. In the circumstances, it is recommended that the application be deferred to allow consideration and further negotiations to be carried out to address these concerns. If members agree to deferment, it would also be useful if any other issues members have concerns with are incorporated in the reason for deferral. This suggestion, I feel, is in the interest of all parties concerned. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. So, this is going to be a recommendation for deferral now, I believe, and but we will run through the. Shall we run through it as normal, Sarah?
Yes, Chairman. Pass to the planning officer to make the presentation now, Chair.
Okay, so I'll bring in Peter Bainbridge now, who'll be the case officer presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen with you. There we go. Hopefully you can all see that now. This is an application for reserve matters following the grant of outline permission. This is the final phases of the Hale Harbour development. I just want to go over, just repeat what Mark has told you already about the addendum was circulated. The main points in that are that the Town Council support it, subject to a number of questions. The comments about ICOMOS have been noted and the recommendation has now been changed to one on deferral. The final thing, I have a verbal update regarding the comment from the drainage officer. They've confirmed they have no objections to the proposal. Any detailed design will be covered by the conditions attached to the outline planning permission. The key issues are set out there. The presentation will seek to focus on some of the key concerns around the development. So we're looking at the Riviera Fields aspect of it, in particular, Hilltop, Eastern Gateway and East Quay. This shows the extent of the reserve matters application. The actual outline application site covered a much wider area, including the rest of the harbour. The main points I'd like to show on this side are the aspects of the boundary of the World Heritage Site, which runs along behind Clifton Terrace, along the existing Quay Road, North Road, there into the harbour, and including East Quay and the Eastern Gateway here. Riviera Field and Hilltop and most of Western Gateway there are outside the World Heritage Site, but within its setting. Slightly more detailed site, This shows the listed buildings and listed quay walls around the harbour. The boundary of the conservation area follows a similar boundary along here to the World Heritage Site. You also note there's various public footpaths and bridleways which run up through Riviera Fields and on the northern part of the site there. An aerial view of the shot showing the satellite things. Things have moved on slightly from this now. The Wharfside development, the Wharfside here, which was granted consent nearly a couple of years ago now, that's underway and development has commenced. Work has also started within the hilltop in terms of ecological mitigation and provision of the spine road to service the development. And Riviera Fields here is also being used for the storage of spoil in connection with the development, but there's no particular issues arising from that. The character zones, these are listed in the report, but I just thought a local plan to show where these relative areas are would be helpful. The wharf area here and the hilltop car park, they have detailed consent. Riviera Fields is here, hilltop area here, Western Gateway is here. The green area is the yards area. Chieftain's Yard is here, Eastern Gateway by the access to the site, and East Quay. This shows the illustrative master plan, shows the site in context, surrounding areas and features of particular interest. You've got the old chalets up to the north, the business park here, which the council helped fund with the renewables, the hilltop car park, which has been consented, hilltop area running through behind the yards, and the East Quay and Eastern Gateway here. Oops. Looking at various aspects of the site in more detail, hilltop. This site is an area raised by Historic England and ICOMOS. It shows a series of detached units ranging in size from 2 to 4 bedrooms, high quality design, high quality materials, lots of stone, some flat green roofs, pitch roofs of natural slate, timber, relatively low density, certainly a lot less than was envisioned in the outline application, and set within a naturalistic duneland setting. Then just some rendered views which have been produced to support the application. This is looking across the site from the cricket club towards the land. You can just see the top of Hilltop sitting sort of level with the top of the cricket club, with the wharf development lower down here. Then this is the view looking back across the estuary, the consented development along the frontage here. The chalets you can see on the skyline back here. Hilltop sits in here, and the Riviera Field development sits there just above the top of the skyline there. Which brings on to Riviera Fields. This is the current proposal for Riviera Fields. Has been various amendments made through the stages of the development or the application process to address various concerns raised both by residents in Clifton Terrace here and also consultees. So the apartment blocks here being reduced in height. The protected tree belt here will be retained. There are some issues with it in terms of age and maturity of trees. So we're looking to introduce and manage that to ensure it maintains a landscape feature in the foreseeable future. The spine road will run through the development and link up to Churchtown Lane here. However, this will be restricted access only to public transport, pedestrian cyclists and emergency vehicles. There's a range of houses and apartments within this development. Again, it's a slightly lesser development than envisioned at the outline stage. Again, it's high quality. There's various open spaces, play areas within the development as well. It's just a general elevation showing how Clifton Terrace and the proposed development will link in together. And just a rendered view of one of the lanes within Riviera Fields, showing the mix of the houses. These are the green roofs on one side, slate roofs on the other, materials, slurried brick and painted brick. Moving on down to Eastern Gateway, this is the dry berth area. The main point to note here, this line running through it, that's the line of the existing old quay wall. The listed quay wall and harbour wall is down here, and it starts again up here at the bridge across to East Quay. This is a shot of it. You see the listed wall, harbour walls here, and further on here, and on this side of the development. This is the actual wall, which is a lot of concern about, in front of the Custom House, which is listed. And this shows an indication of how it would be constructed, be a deck on piles with a timber frontage, similar to the views on other parts of South Quay. Finally, moving on to East Quay. This shows the main part of it, the film house, which is in here, and the art centre here. Also next to it, there's a number of small workshop units. And this building here replaces an existing building which will be used primarily for fishermen, and so maintain the fishermen presence on East Quay, as you'll see later. This is the staggered roof, which is a concern for the World Heritage Site officer there. That will be finished in a green concrete at the moment again. It was going to be copper, but that was removed at the request of the heritage bodies. The final image is one that shows before an existing view looking from North Quay across to East Quay. That's the custom house where the dry berth area would be. The bottom one shows existing sheds. The top image shows the proposed ones. The existing shed there will be retained as it currently is. The workshop units to one side, which is currently open, will be built on. And you can just see behind the existing building, the existing outline, ridge line of the film house and art centre. And behind that will be a new building for the fishermen. So just conclude quickly, as you'll be aware, CMOS is seeking revisions to the proposal. The outline permission has been granted, and obviously everything sits within that. The report does set out a number of significant public benefits from the scheme. The design is considered to be high quality. Finally, the comments on the Environment Agency is still awaited, but it's expected, given the previous conversations, that their objection will be withdrawn. So in the light of all this, the recommendation is that the application is deferred to allow the concerns of ICOMOS to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter. We do have some speakers on this one now. The first speaker is Mr. Andrew Roden. Do we have Mr. Andrew Roden?
Good evening, Chairman. If he could press *6 to unmute his telephone, please.
Okay, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Roden. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll be reminded when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. ICOMOS's comments demonstrate the damage to heritage assets this development could cause. I edit a National Historic magazine. I'm keenly aware of damage wreaked in Hale over the years and elsewhere by unsuitable development. In almost every case, loss of heritage assets is avoidable. Our World Heritage Site is one of the most important industrial sites in the world. It's equal to the likes of Ironbridge and Coalbrookdale, which with Hale is the other birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. We've barely scratched the surface of its potential to generate jobs, attract visitors and inspire innovation. As an example, the Science Museum Group has expressed interest in the concept of Hale hosting an annex to its collection. It is vital that developments do not prevent such possibilities by sacrificing key heritage assets. When heritage assets lost, it's gone forever. And as Ironbridge shows, preservation and interpretation of them can generate huge economic, social and environmental benefits. It's inconceivable that the committee's counterparts in Telford and Wrekin would support a development with such a huge heritage impact on their World Heritage Site. It strikes me that developments such as this present members of the committee with a bit of a problem. Without clear and transparent appraisals which quantify the benefits of the development versus heritage harm and opportunities lost, you're essentially being asked to place a shaky bet on the long-term outcome. And I don't think that's good enough. There should and must be a clear appraisal process which asks, what are the benefits and costs? What's the long-term impact of potentially losing part of the WHS? In this case, what other alternatives to the Eastern Gateway plans are there, and how do they stack up against those appraisals? We simply don't know, but what we can say with certainty is that there will be other solutions. The presumption must be to protect heritage assets first and foremost in the World Heritage Site. So I urge everyone involved in this project and making decisions about it just to draw breath, amend the scheme where necessary and then decide. The long-term opportunities and benefits of the World Heritage Site in Hale are likely to be extremely significant. Compromising those with the loss of heritage assets just isn't justifiable. There's a lot to like about this scheme. The developer has done a lot of heritage work, but we must get it right. As ICOMOS's comments show, it isn't there yet. So I urge you all just to let that work be done so we can have a project that meets the heritage criteria and that Hale can be proud of. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions to the speaker? Just looking at the committee members, councillors. We have none, do we? Sarah, Adrian?
No speakers, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. We then go on to the next speaker. Next speaker is Charmian Lark.
Chairman, could Charmian please press *6 to unmute her phone?
Hear me okay?
Hello, is that Charmian?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Great.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll remind you when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much. I'm requesting you defer this application for the following additional 3 reasons. 1, road traffic and likely increased congestion. The proposed site development will create what some are calling the biggest cul-de-sac in Cornwall. Traffic modelling was undertaken 10 years ago now, and the world is now different. During this time, traffic has increased by 10% overall, and van mileage has increased by over 40%. This means dramatically increased chances of traffic jams in Hale, especially at the road junction to this new development where over 1,000 new cars are expected. Please ask for up-to-date information and consequent problem solving this major upcoming nuisance. The second reason is the Riviera Fields area. It's designed as very cramped and needs to be redesigned to allow more private defendable space between homes. This will increase neighbourliness, reduce overcrowding, reduce parked car dominance and the likelihood of future slums arising. See the Cornwall Design Review meeting notes on this, which you've just received. In addition, increasing local green space would reduce increased rainfall runoff and reduce problems downhill around Clifton Terrace, which is already a problem. The third reason is climate change, which those of you who know me will know this is something I care about passionately. You'll no doubt remember the council voted unanimously, bar one dissenter, to declare a climate emergency 2 years ago now. Since then, climate chaos has come closer, including in Cornwall and Hale. The council has the aim of reaching carbon neutrality by 2030, i.e. 9 years away, and is preparing a climate emergency DPD. This new development would only just be completing then, so it must be as close to zero carbon now in the planning as possible, and must fit the emerging climate emergency DPD. The 2 issues on this are sea level rise is happening much faster in reality than all the models, and so the present proposals are likely to see the harbourside buildings flooded within their lifetimes, possibly even within our lifetimes as storm surges increase. The residential areas are not planned to meet the highest environmental standards that we in Cornwall aim to achieve. So please ask for the following: updated modelling and site design to allow for sea level rise, site design to integrate solar on all suitable rooftops. The developers were claiming heritage people said, no, you can't have it, but in fact that's not the case as it turns out. And third option, please, to ask for is the developers to assist the Hale Climate Action Group and a community-owned renewable energy project to offset all the carbon emissions from the whole site. If this is a community project, it will guarantee sizable funds to help the community of Hale for the long-term future. Please decide to defer on these and the other grounds already mentioned. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions of the speaker from the committee members? None? I can't see any.
No questions, Chairman.
No questions. Okay. The next speakers, we don't have anyone from the Hale Town Council by the look of it on my list. Do we have anyone from Hale Town Council, Sarah?
No, Chairman.
Okay. The next speaker then is Simon Wright.
Chairman, if he could press *6 to unmute his telephone, please. Chairman, the person that's dialed in with the last 3 digits 222, can I just clarify that that is Simon Wright, because it's a different telephone number to the one I was given. I left a message for him to dial in. So could that person press *6 to unmute their telephone and then confirm, please? Chairman, if you want to go on to the next speaker, I can make a telephone call to clarify Simon's position.
The next speaker then is Matt Williams. Do we have Matt Williams?
We do, Chairman. Again, if he could, yeah, okay.
Hello. Hello, is that Matt Williams? Hello.
Simon Wright here. Simon Wright here.
Hello, is that Matt Williams?
It's Simon Wright.
Chairman, I
Okay,
think it's
we've got-
Mr. Wright.
Okay, we've got Simon Wright on that. Okay, right, we got him in on the meeting. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this strategic planning meeting. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and reminder when there's 30 seconds remaining.
First of all, thank you for your time. As members of the committee will appreciate, the proposals for Hale Harbour have been subject to lengthy discussion and refinement over many years. The scheme that is currently under construction on site has come about because of a thoughtful design process that is sensitive towards the World Heritage status of the harbour, as well as the aspirations of the local community. The neighbourhood plan and critically the drive towards zero carbon development. We are immensely proud of what is being and will be achieved. The application before you represents the final piece of the jigsaw. The approval of this scheme will secure the final funding arrangements for the seamless delivery of all of the proposals. It will allow us to instruct our architects to start work on the detailed drawings, and we'll see the water sports hub and hotel come online in the early phases of the construction. The community and economic benefits are integral to the project, and our ambition to deliver enhanced sports, leisure and work opportunities at the harbour is evident in the proposals for the new film and art house and water-based recreation. The dry berthing area at the Eastern Gateway will bring additional harbour activity and income to the town and provide one of very few such facilities within Cornwall. Natural, we are aware of the comments received from Ickamos as recently as Tuesday. We fully appreciate the immense historic importance of Hale Harbour as part of the wider World Heritage Site. As the ward members and case officer will confirm, we have gone to great efforts to engage with the heritage stakeholders, including the Historic England and World Heritage Site Office, as well as Ickamos. In refining all of our proposals over several years, there have been numerous amendments which we have willingly made. It is a sign of the success and the constructive dialogue that all heritage stakeholders, including Historic England and Ickamos, and indeed your officers, have concluded that any residual concerns at the end of this process are minor. Your officers' report confirms this. Your officers' original recommendation was that the committee should approve our application, and I give your officers delegated authority to grant the consent if Ickamos raise no new significant issues, and if so, such concerns are satisfactorily addressed. Ickamos has indeed raised no new significant issues. Their comments of Tuesday echo those of Historic England and the World Heritage Site Office, whose remaining concerns are minor. Moreover, your officers have already satisfactorily addressed these concerns in their report to you. They rightly conclude that those minor concerns are outweighed by the benefits of development. To reduce the proposals for East Quay and the Eastern Gateway, as Ickamos indicate, would be to reduce the feasibility of key community elements of the scheme, and in doing so, lessen the benefits to the local people. We believe there is no advantage at all in deferring our application today. That would only delay the many significant benefits that would arise from the development. Given the minor nature of the issues involved, the World Heritage designation remains secure. I therefore please urge you to approve our application today, as your officers originally recommended, and let us go forward changing Hale for the good.
Time.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions from councillors to the speaker? Do you have any questions? I see none.
No questions, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person speaking is Matt Williams. Do we have Matt Williams there?
We do, Chairman. If he could press *6 to unmute his telephone. Mr. Williams, can you please press *6 to unmute your telephone?
Hello.
Hello, is that Mr. Williams?
It is, yeah. Hi, speaking.
Okay,
Hi.
welcome to the strategic planning meeting.
Thank you.
You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and reminder when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. We have been working on the regeneration of Hale Harbour for many years, developing a design that is respectful of its rich heritage and one that creates a positive future for the harbour. The project presents a complex set of parameters: its heritage, its community, sustainability, and the need for longevity. All of these needs have to be balanced, and this balance is reflected in the submitted proposals. In direct discussion with heritage stakeholders, members of the Town Council and the community, we have made significant improvements to scale and arrangement of buildings across the whole site. Comments and suggestions have been directly incorporated, shaping the submitted scheme. We of course also recognise that in order for the project to succeed, some compromises have been made from all parties involved. Throughout the process, we have been respectful of the views of others and will continue this constructive dialogue as future phases come forward. The resulting scheme proposes significantly less development than was granted within the outline permission, and we are pleased that ECOMOS have raised no significant new concerns following their review. The design of the proposal refers to the heritage of the site, with the proposal recognised by Historic England as being a high-quality design response to a complex site. The first phase of the project is currently under construction and has recently won one of the UK's top awards for housing design. The first residents, a local family, moved in before Christmas. Aside from the focus on heritage, we also have a responsibility, as does everyone on this committee, to recognise the future and the importance of the issues of climate change. The project has an exemplar sustainability agenda. I would like to reassure members that as a design team, we are industry leaders in low carbon and sustainable design, and it underpins everything we do. The submitted scheme adopts a low embodied carbon approach. The low embodied carbon design will redevelop a significant brownfield site, feature extensive tree planting throughout. The green landscape spaces, both public and private, will enhance and preserve biodiversity. Rainwater harvesting, renewable energy and electric vehicle charging points are all provided within the proposal. We have also made some notable concessions to the scheme at the request of the World Heritage Site team. A key example of this request is to not use copper cladding on East Quay, a site built by the Cornwall Copper Company, stating that copper is an inappropriate material to use on this site. Instead, they have requested that concrete cladding is used. Like many of you, we feel that copper is an appropriate material to use adjacent to a copper house pool on the site built by the Cornwall Copper Company. However, we recognise that the World Heritage Site team have taken a different view, and we have made the cladding amendments requested by their team.
30 seconds remaining.
Within the proposal, we have ensured that existing businesses, community groups and clubs are accommodated. An example of this are the new facilities for the Gig Club, Canoe Club and the provision of a new community hall. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Town Council, the World Heritage Site team, Historic England and the Cornwall Council for the high level of engagement that has led to such a rigorous design process, and we welcome your support to ensure this long-awaited regeneration project continues to be realised. Thank you.
Councillor Kachara, you're on mute.
Sorry, are there any questions of the speaker? We have John Baston has his hand up.
Right, thank you, Chair. Oops. Sorry, you may well have mentioned this, but can you remind me what sort of heating systems you're employing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, yeah, sorry. So for phase 2, there's no fossil fuels, so no gas supplied to the residential units. So there's electric heating sources and electric power supplied to all of the units within the phase 2 proposal.
Right, you hadn't considered ground source or air source or anything along those lines?
Yes, they're all included within the proposal, and just to say that the phase 1 works that are underway at the moment, the residential units there have ground source heat pumps installed.
Right, but not phase 2?
Within phase 2, there'll be similar measures, yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you for that. Let's say who we got on next. Next one, we got the electoral division members. We have John Pollard and then we'll have Graham Code. John Pollard, are you there? Councillor John Pollard.
I am. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, John. And hopefully you can keep being a councillor, you can keep this within 5 minutes, can you, please?
Of course. You know me, short and to the point. Can I say just thank you, Chairman, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. As colleagues on the committee will be aware, we are hopefully coming to the end of a long saga of the development of Hale Harbour area, and all I can say is thank goodness for that. In terms of this reserved matters application, a number of concerns have been raised, and I thank the developer and the architect for their willingness to adapt the scheme in response to many of the issues that have been raised. The residents of Clifton Terrace are the most directly affected, and understandably they've been alarmed by the scale and impact of the works already undertaken. However, due process has been followed, and our officers are to be commended on the careful, systematic and thorough approach they've taken. I do, however, believe it's essential that the developers maintain close liaison with the local residents as the development continues. Drainage on the site at Riviera Fields has been a serious concern, and I'm pleased that the council officer has now signed off the proposals. The estate at Riviera Fields has been improved and made much less brutal in its impact, and more play space has been included within the houses. I have an ongoing concern that the previous agreement that traffic will not have vehicular access through Phillick Churchtown or along Clifton Terrace will at some point be challenged in the future. So please, this arrangement must be set in stone, and of course the concerns of Iconmos that have been recently raised need to be resolved. I speak as someone who's been involved in the protection, improvement and development of the Hale Harbour area for nearly 40 years. I'm delighted that the preservation of the harbour and the massive investment in its future has happened on my watch as the Cornwall councillor, and I very much look forward to its successful conclusion. I've always campaigned to make all development as sensitive to the locality as possible, and despite not achieving total success in this aspect, I fully support this application. You're muted, Mark.
Yeah, you're on mute, Chairman.
Very sorry. There's a lot of background noise at the moment at my place. Are there any questions, local member, committee members to Nicholas?
Thanks. Thank you for that, John, because I was waiting to hear about Clifton Terrace and what might be the concerns over there, because I know that they've had some landslips there, haven't they? So just to kind of like reassure me that you feel that that needs to be kind of like put in more detail. The soft, what is it they want? Soft soil nailing system.
Well, that's
going to be sufficient.
Well, that's a separate issue, so through the chair, in that the landfall is at the front of Clifton Terrace.
Yeah.
This building is by the side and at the back.
Yeah.
The developers have taken proposed action to protect their bit that faces the cliff or slope that goes down to the Memorial Walk, and Cornwall Council are working with them to see the best remedial action, and that's continued along Clifton Terrace. So as far as I'm concerned, it's an issue that's being dealt with.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. No other questions to the local member? Okay. Thank you for that, John.
Thank you.
We'll now bring in the adjoining member, which is Councillor Code.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In fact,
okay, well, I will limit you to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Please.
I'm trying to start. You keep interrupting me. I'm not just the adjoining member. Part of the development is actually in my ward, so I'm in a similar situation to John. John is very hard act to follow, as you know, is very succinct in what he said, and I agree with every single piece of it. This has been going on, the situation with Hale Harbour first collapsed when I was in my teens. I've long wanted to see it brought back to something approaching its former usefulness and glory. I don't want to spoil what John has said, except the only bit I would suggest now is there is not necessarily a need to defer this, because the original suggestion that delegated authority is given to the officers so that the reserve matters consent can be granted if Iconmos raise significant issues and as long as they're satisfactorily addressed. And if anybody, as I cannot vote or join the debate, as anybody else would like to suggest we follow that original recommendation, I would be very happy. I think we can deal with this today and then trust our excellent officers to liaise with the developer and ICOMOS. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Code. Any questions of Councillor Code from committee members? We have none. Thank you for that. We shall now move on to questions of officers. Any questions of officers from committee members or councillors? You see any? None coming up yet. Got none coming up?
None come up, Chair. Nobody seems to be very forthcoming today.
Well, the officers got off light on this one. We'll now go into debate then. Who's going to start the ball rolling on this one? Well, I'll start the ball rolling then. You heard Councillor Coates actually state that he'd be happy if we went with the original proposal that we had before the officers actually told us that the recommendation there has changed for deferral. I think we do need to heed the officer's advice, and I will be moving that we do move the recommendation for deferral so we can actually get this scheme up and running as soon as possible and iron out any problems. So I'll be moving the recommendation for deferral.
I'll happily second you on that.
Thank you, Andrew. That's Andrew Long. Any other councillors wish to speak on this one? Okay, I can't see any hands. Is Fred Greenside wanting to speak?
No, thank you, Chairman. Just go to the vote, I suggest.
Okay, all right. Can you read out the recommendation then, Sarah, please?
Yes, Chairman. I'm just looking for the detailed recommendation. 1 second. Yes, Chairman, I can confirm that the recommendation proposed by yourself and seconded by Councillor Long is that the application is deferred to allow the concerns of ICOMOS to be addressed. I will call your names in alphabetical order. Can you please state if you are voting for, against or abstaining on the proposal? Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Dyer.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Foot.
For.
Councillor Greenslade.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Kasmarak.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Nicholas.
For.
Councillor Olivier.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
For.
And Councillor Rand.
For.
Yes, Chairman, I can agree that the proposal has been agreed, and that has been at 1, 2.
Thank you for that. And thank
12
you.
votes for, 1 vote against.
Okay, thank you for that. Next item on the agenda, item 5, any other business that the chairman considers to be of urgency? I have none. So I'd like to thank all members for staying with us for this very long meeting today, and wish you all the best, and stay safe and keep well.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for confirmation when the live stream has finished. If you could just hold for a moment. Thank you.
Okay.